Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into Hoopsville on this Thursday evening. It's the 6th of February. We are out and rolling on this evening with a jam-packed show full of surprises. It's a bit of a supersized edition. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. If you want to interact with us, you can do so in many capacities, all on the bottom of your screen if you're watching at home. You can always email us, hoopsville@d3sports.com. You can join us on our social medias, which are Twitter and or X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. We finally got that up and running this week. At D3 Hoopsville for the first three. Blue Sky is just Hoopsville. You'll find us there. Use the hashtag Hoopsville as well. Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville, along with YouTube at youtube.com/D3 Hoopsville. That's where you will find much of our simulcasts, I should point out. We're simulcasting everything. Of course, we're also streaming as we normally would as well. You can find those at let's say Team One Sports app. So you can find it on the Team One Sports app, or you can find us on, let's see here. How do you go to it? So Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Roku, or Amazon Fire apps will have us. Got a bit of background noise. Left some drives running this evening. We'll get them shut down later in the program as we continue along, so bear with us there. Hopefully we got some of the audio sync solved, at least for the live portion of today. We did record a segment. I noticed it was sitting in that as well. We're try and get that solved as soon as we can. It will be there for that tape segment. Nothing I can do about that, but hopefully it won't be a bother any other way, if that makes any sense. So if you see a lip sync issue and we're still dealing with it, I don't know what to say exactly, other than we made some adjustments to some settings and thought we solved it, but maybe we didn't, right? So thanks for joining us, everybody. Welcome in, Phil. I see you, bud. Supersize show coming up ahead of the Super Bowl weekend. So what do we have in store tonight? Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. I appreciate you coming on to ask such educated and smart questions, as it were. Well, let's see. First and foremost, we have teased it a little bit. We do have the committee chairs on the show tonight. They will be later in the program. We talked to both Bethany Danley and John Lacey. A conversation that admittedly went much longer than I anticipated it. I thought it would actually be a bit of a shorter conversation, but some topics ended up kind of going off on some tangents and or in depth. So they are coming up. You'll get to hear them in their entirety. Really good conversation. Highly suggest you tune in for that. But in the meantime, we will talk to four teams that seem a little bit surprising. They're not fully surprising. Some of these programs have been in the national conversation before or even recently, but where they're positioned at this point may come as a surprise to some. We'll talk to Wisconsin Lutheran men's basketball coach Aaron Anderson about his program. They're up to number 8 in the top 25. Eric Bridgeland from the number 19 Redlands unit will join us. We'll talk to Eric about whether they finally have broken through in the, not only nationally, but in the conference race since he got there. Remember, the Skyac has been their kind of Achilles heel, as it were, the last couple of years. Bonkers of a game last night against Claremont Mudd Scripps. We'll talk to Eric about his 19th ranked Bulldogs and what we saw out in Vegas as well. John Herbrexmeyer will join us from Bethel. They're back in the top 25 for the first time since pre-COVID, when they went on a 20-game winning streak, in fact. We'll talk to him about his Royals. Huge game coming up this weekend against Gustavus Adolphus. We'll look forward to chatting with him about the Royals and how they're doing in the newly fangled MIAC in terms of scheduling. And Catherine Auguste will join us from the number 23 Colorado College women's team. Also saw them out in Vegas, certainly impressed. We'll talk about the Tigers program and how they're coming along in the SCAC and what to expect from them. And again, as I mentioned, the National Committee chairs will join us. John Lacey and Bethany Danley will talk NIL with them. We'll talk about regional rankings. Yes, regional rankings. We'll talk also racks, what their role is, how they came to where they got with the NPI setup and dials. We'll also talk bracketing, what to expect from it, who's quote-unquote protected, and what does that really mean, who isn't protected, and what are the guidelines they've been given when it comes to bracketing. Hint, hint. 1v16, 2v15 is not necessarily how we will see it. If you followed any of the fall sports, you probably got a hint of that. Championships Committee, and I'll mention this out of the segment, did make a few adjustments coming into this year. We'll see how they play out, or into this winter sport, I should say, from the fall sports. We'll see how that plays out. But that's a long interview. We actually broke it up into two. We'll be airing that a little bit later. As far as what's gone on so far this week, Wednesday was the biggest day, and Illinois Wesleyan men's basketball took a tumble. North Central knocked them off, ending an 8-game winning streak for the Titans. Number 4, Platteville knocked off number 6, UW Lacrosse in a bonkers of a good game, too. Of course, when you get 2 top 10 teams in conference play, that says something, right? Number 7, Trine lost its second game in a week, losing to Hope. So Calvin beats Hope and Trine. Hope beats Trine. Trine can't beat Calvin or Hope. But remember, Trine and Calvin are pretty much leapfrog and days on everything ahead of the rest of the MIA, including Hope. This doesn't hurt Trine in that sense, except it now makes it very difficult to win the regular season and make sure that the conference goes to the MTI Center. That's now fully in Calvin's favor, as they not only have the advantage on Trine by 2 games now, but they have them on the tiebreaker, I would assume, considering Trine lost to Hope and Calvin beat Hope both times. So that is an interesting twist on all of that, going just from last night. We mentioned the Redlands score. We'll talk to Eric Bridgeland coming up. They were down 12 in the second half to CMS, but won by 5 to move into second place in those conference standings. Pitt Bradford's a team you really should keep an eye out, though. They nearly got upset by Hilbert last night. So lots going on a Wednesday night. Christopher Newport continued to win. They've won 4 in a row. They defeated Salisbury 81-69. Salisbury's an interesting team this year. Came out of the gates pretty strong, got some really good results, but have not really kind of had that in the second half of the year. Wisconsin Lutheran continues to move along. They got a 3-point win, though, over Dominican. We'll talk to their head coach, Wisconsin Lutheran's head coach, coming up about all that. So that was just on the men's side, some of the things that stood out. By the way, DeSales lost 70-69 to Kings yesterday. DeSales hasn't been themselves in either men's or women's basketball this season. DeSales is now 10-10 overall, 4-5 in MAC Freedom play, just on the men's side. On the women's side, a little bit quieter, but still some notes. Oshkosh took 2 overtimes to get their second win over Platteville, Illinois Wesleyan. A little closer going undefeated. Johns Hopkins got a big win over Gettysburg. I'd be lying if I said I didn't kind of see that coming. And Catholic got a revenge win as well. We'll start at the top of that list. Oshkosh had a 13-point deficit in the fourth quarter before winning in double overtime against Whitewater. If you're Whitewater, that's got to sting. You had the Titans on the ropes and couldn't keep them down on the ropes. The Randolph-Macon continues to win. Got a win over number 21 W&L, so that's 22-21. I'm sorry, let me phrase that again. Randolph-Macon got that win on Saturday over Randolph-Macon. They got the win over Bridgewater on Wednesday. I cannot read my own handwriting. So the Yellow Jackets continue to impress. I'm debating about a show. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it. I might have no choice but do it either this Monday or next Monday, where I get two programs from each school and just do a bunch of dual interviews, because there's a bunch of duals like Randolph-Macon who are doing so well this year in both men's and women's. Rhode Island College lost to number 24 Mass Dartmouth. Remember, this is an RIC team who was a juggernaut the last 2 years. They're now 15-6. Mass Dartmouth is 17-2. Johns Hopkins scored only 19 points in the first half, but they scored 40 in the second against the Bullets at Gettysburg to win 59-51. That was in Baltimore. When I saw the game between these two in early January up in Gettysburg, Gettysburg played really well. Hopkins played okay. At one point, the Blue Jays were 0 for 14 from beyond the arc. And I think they finished 2 of 17, 2 of 18 maybe. Really not a great game. Hopkins is a good team. Gettysburg has impressed me all season considering they lost Slozig at the start of the year. And it sounds like not only is Slozig not coming back this year, it sounds like she will not return at all. She is not going to try and prolong her collegiate life, as it were. And what stands out to me is when in that game was I had a feeling there was no way this game went to Baltimore and either Hopkins wasn't going to show up and make it tight or not get the win. And that's not a knock on Gettysburg. They've been rolling. This is only their second loss on the entire season. Their last loss was Williams on December 20th, I think it was. The problem is it puts Gettysburg now a half game behind Hopkins. They need to win out or at least stay in pace with Hopkins to guarantee that they get the win or get a tie for the regular season and hope that they will get the home court advantage. The real trick for Gettysburg, or real trick for Hopkins, is they've lost 13 straight conference championship games, and a lot of them recently have been at home to Gettysburg. So I don't think the Bullets are scared about going down to Baltimore again, and this might be a good wake-up call for them. But that's a great win for number 20 Johns Hopkins. I think Hopkins is safe in that 20 range. I think Gettysburg at 9, maybe that's been a little high, but I'd been comfortable at 10. They are very good. They did not get a lot outside of their main weapon in Arnoley. They have, when I looked at the box scores. So good win for Hopkins there, but certainly felt like I saw that coming. Catholic and Elizabethtown, another great top 25 game on a Wednesday night. Catholic got the win over Elizabethtown despite losing to them earlier in the season. Cardinals had a 25-2 scoring margin over turnovers alone. Catholic's now 18-2 overall, 11-2 in conference action, and get that split with E-Town. So that's just a few of them just on a Wednesday night. Certainly fun to see going around. New top 25 obviously will be out Monday. Of course, everyone's also talking about the NPI, and as I mentioned, we'll talk to the coaches coming up about that. If you got questions for us, you know how to interact with us. We're on the social medias. We're on those streaming channels as well. You're welcome to interact with us in those capacities, and we'll certainly look forward to answering any questions you may have. In the meantime, we'll take a break. We'll get into our segments. We'll start off with the Warriors of Wisconsin Lutheran. They're bobbleheads right over our shoulder, by the way. We'll talk to Coach Aaron about his squad and how they're doing so far this season and whether it's meeting, above, maybe below expectations. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. More with Coach and our other guests when we come back.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Football has taught me a lot throughout my life. It's definitely had a huge imprint on who I am as a person. Competing at a Division III level created that opportunity for me to go to college. Not only was I the first one in my family to graduate college, but I was really the first one to even go. Being the first one, I'm breaking that cycle, and now that I've graduated, I'm not sure what's the next step, but I know I have a lot of doors open. And a lot of those are open because I played football and ran track here at Otterbein.
The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC 1927. That's NABC.com or NABC 1927 on social media.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all. It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us. All of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
If I lose, I'll respond with respect.
If I win, I'll back it up with humility.
If I fail, I'll rise up with honor. It's tough for us to put it all on the line.
Don't undo my hard work with poor sportsmanship.
Respect. It's the name of the game.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
For the love of the game, but for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
We are the coaches of women's basketball. We are leaders and teachers, dreamers and winners. We are professionals who conduct ourselves ethically and with integrity. We place the education, safety, and well-being of the athletes we coach above all else and teach them the fundamental values they need to succeed in life. We are coaches united for the good of our game and those who play it. We are the WBCA.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. I hope you're well as we continue to roll along. And by the way, new angles on the Hoopsville studio, new look on the Hoopsville studio. Still working on a little bit of the lighting. We kind of toned it down a little bit today. I'm going to keep playing with this as we look for the better look. You might notice some new uniforms hanging on the walls as well. If you've got questions for us, of course, you can always email us, hoopsville at d3sports.com. Join us on the socials. Look for us at D3Hoopsville or Hoopsville and use the hashtag Hoopsville as well. All right, let's talk our first guest. Wisconsin Lutheran men's basketball in the top 10 in the latest D3 Hoops top 25, playing extremely good basketball. And I guess maybe for me, it was the win earlier in the season against then undefeated Ripon that stood out and told me, all right, this team's going to be legit this year because and by the way, they won convincingly. And then the second time they saw them, they won even more convincingly, which basically told me, yeah, this is going to be a solid team to talk about. So joining us on the Hoopsville hotline with a twist is Aaron Anundson, head coach of the Warriors. You notice he got a picture there, folks. Reason being, shortly before the show, they lost power in the area. Coach doing his darndest to join us anyway. Coach, I appreciate that first and foremost. What's going on?
Well, it's an honor to be back on. You know, it's been a minute. Here tonight, we were supposed to have a reserve game on our campus, so we were trying to get everything organized, and we just found out that a transformer went out in the city of Wauwatosa. So before this, I was scrambling, trying to get everybody in place, and now I found a window in our building because we do not have any power, and excited to join you. We found a way here tonight, Dave.
I appreciate it, sir. The fact a transformer went out means this is not going to be an easy fix. But your dedication to joining us on the show is to be commended. I finally did get that email, by the way. So the power outage may have had a little impact on that as well. So quick note, folks, you're not going to see Coach Anundson's picture, but he's there. And he's got, his face, but we do have a nice picture of him and the family. After, I assume that's last year's championship, Coach?
Yes, that is a picture, with my wife and 3 children after the conference tournament championship.
It's a great segue because at this point, you're in your 8th year as head coach. This is a program that has won 12 straight games. You're in the top 25. You're in a pretty decent spot in the latest NPI, though that certainly will move a lot in the next few weeks. Snuck out a win last night, but winning and conference titles and all that is starting to become expectations for this program, is it not?
Maybe to the outsiders, yes, but I think to anybody who's coached or played would recognize that winning is really, really hard.
Sure.
And anytime you can win a game, you're just grateful and thankful for, the ability to come out on top. I think us as competitors, that's what we love to do, is compete. Rewind 7 years ago, if I would have ever dreamed that this was the case, not exactly, but we've had phenomenal administration, phenomenal assistant coaches, phenomenal players. And, it's just been an unbelievable ride, probably more than I even imagined when I came here. I never expected that we were going to do what we've done so far in the first 7 years.
Yeah, maybe I don't mean expectation in terms of you guys roll the ball out and just figure you're going to win and you're going to get a crown. But I mean that's the bar. That's what you all now expect as a program you're going to go do. Whether it happens is obviously to be determined. This is a program, though, 24-5 last year, 19-8 the year before that. You'd had one 19-win season prior to that in recent memory. The closest you came was 18 wins back in 07-08, and you weren't part of that program. So you've turned that around. I know it hasn't been easy, but has it been getting the right recruits and or getting guys to buy in?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. WLC is a unique place, and if you're a Division III coach, you have to understand your niche and recruit to your niche. And we've done a really nice job of that. And I think the one thing that our program has really thrived on, bigger than recruitment, is retention. We've been able to keep a lot of freshmen, and they've been able to develop and become seniors. And if you look across Division III, the teams that have a lot of success are usually the teams that are veteran driven. And for the most part, I kind of joke, but the last handful of years, we've gotten old and we stayed old. And we've sprinkled in some young guys here or there, but the ability for us to have a consistent foundation, a culture in place of a decent amount of returners every year has been really paramount for our success.
You have an extremely large roster. I did notice the numbers are ginormous. To your point, a reserve game certainly makes a lot of sense. You have 4 guys, I believe, who are listed as graduate students. Granted, a little bit of that will change next year, but you still have a good collection of seniors, sophomores, juniors especially. You've got the ability to turn this over, as it were. Are they getting the experience needed to help make that turn come the offseason?
I really like our young guys. Our younger guys have done a phenomenal job in practice. I don't think they've been, maybe had the opportunity to thrive potentially in games yet. But even when this crew graduates, they've been an unbelievably special group to our institution. I'm excited to see what the next wave of guys can do, because we've been very pleasantly surprised at all the different things they can do in practice, and they're competing and they're getting better. I think the biggest thing is they have a growth mindset in everything they do, and that's really going to help us for the future.
Your top three guys in scoring are all graduate students in Ryan Brokel, Jacob Stoltz, Grayson, can't remember how to say Grayson's last name suddenly.
Grayson Getz.
Thank you. And A.J. Voss, who's the senior.
Welcome.
We should point out the first three, 17-8, 16-8, 16-3, and then you get to Voss at 10-3. And we'll give Jacob Heffel a shout-out. 9.7 is pretty close to double digits as well. But what's it about that trio or even quad that makes it so tough? Because that's a lot of points for a group, but it's also defensively feast or famine. You're not going to stop all of them.
Yeah, they all have the ability to be our leading scorer every single night. Those five guys have been playing together for a number of years. They've won 3 of the last 4 conference titles in our program, and they've been there, done that. They're veteran-driven, and their leadership is unbelievable. So they've kind of been the cornerstones of our program the last few years, and it's just been a joy and a blessing to coach them.
Won 5 regular season conference titles, or 4 of the last 5, apologies. This is the first ever ranking in the top 25, interestingly enough, though you have certainly gotten votes in the past. I know voters have put you in and out of their top 25. Heck, I have. 24-game home winning streak as of, I think, last night, or going into last night, maybe it's 25 games at home now. It's important, as we've talked to a lot of guests, of continuing that momentum, winning at home, getting the conference tournament at home, etc. We'll look at the schedule in more depth in a bit, but you've got to be thrilled with just how consistent this has become.
Exactly. You know, when you play at home, you hope to have a home court advantage. Our guys definitely have a lot more confidence when they do play at home. And we've been getting everybody's best effort, best intentionality. And I walk out of every game saying, wow, the other team played great, and somehow we came out on top. And that's a credit to the coaches in our league. I think our league sometimes doesn't really get the credit it deserves, to be honest with you. But it's also a credit to our guys and how hard they prepare, how much they care, and how they treat every game like it's potentially their last. And you know, with that being said, that's how we've been able to be 19-1, is we just focus on the day, focus on the next day, and be the best version of ourselves.
I'm curious, what is it about Wisconsin Lutheran that you're now there as long as you've been and you've wanted to make sure succeeds to this point?
You know, I think it goes back to the consistency of our administration that makes WLC special. You know, I took over for our current athletic director, Skip Newton, who's been at the institution for 33 years. You don't find that a whole lot in higher education anymore. You know, people who are that dedicated to an institution. We have a phenomenal president who has been here 15 years, and Dr. Dan Johnson, and just all the way through. You know, it's just a really special place that people don't leave. And it's something that I definitely don't take for granted, the opportunity and the blessing to coach here.
You mentioned Skip Noon. We should point out he's also just announced his retirement from athletic director. Not remembering the timing, but end of the academic year at the very least. Who knows? Maybe you take over that too, Aaron.
That will not be me. No,
I had it.
I'm gonna kind of stay in my lane for right now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But obviously familiar of the air. You're a Wisconsinite. You went to La Crosse. You graduated in 2005. You drifted a little bit away in your coaching realm. You went over and at one point were coaching at Minnesota State Moorhead in D2 for a little while before getting this job. What is it about Wisconsin? I mean, we know Wisconsin is, people love their basketball and all, but what is it about that area and what clicks for you and the family?
Yeah, it's home. You know, I was extremely blessed. I got married at age 22, and my wife and I moved out to Fargo, North Dakota. And that was my first year ever coaching. I loved it. I coached with my former head coach at UW La Crosse and had a phenomenal experience at the Division II level. But we got there through the year, and my wife was like, I kind of want to go home. So if you can find something back in Wisconsin, Aaron, that would be excellent, because I want to be closer to family. And thankfully, you know, the head coach now at Wabash College, Kyle Brummett, gave me an opportunity to be the assistant coach at Lakeland University. And I was there for 2 years as the assistant. And most people do not know I was one of the youngest head coaches in the country at age 25. And that was a wonderful opportunity for me, because I always dreamed of being a head coach. I really never cared about what level I coached at. I just wanted to make a difference in young men's lives and be around the game of basketball. And, you know, spent 11 years at Lakeland before, you know, moving down to the Milwaukee area. And fast forward 8 years, I feel like it was just yesterday, Dave, we moved down here. But, you know, I have, as you can see on the picture, I have a daughter who's a junior in high school, a son who's an 8th grader, and my youngest daughter's a 6th grader. And basketball coaching is something I love to do, but it's not really who I am, right? And, you know, making sure I'm a great husband and father, to me, is more important than any win or victory that we can have. And WLC has offered me the unbelievable blessing of still staying involved in my children's lives while being able to coach the game I love.
Yeah, again, if people are just tuning in, major power outage in the area. So Coach is not able to join us with any video, so he's showing us a nice picture of the family. I did notice your daughter, your oldest daughter, has some height. I'm assuming she has no choice. She has to play basketball, right?
You know, you would think, you know, and that's probably the $1 million question, but she does not play basketball. She's a pretty high level volleyball player. So we're currently going through the college search process for her. So I'm a little biased. I'm trying to sway her one way. You probably know the way I'm trying to sway her, but we're taking a few visits to other institutions and just kind of going to see what level she ends up at, because she's a very talented young woman.
You're pointing her towards Marion, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
Oh, good.
No, listen, my son's nearly 5'10", or he is 5'10", maybe taller, and has lost his interest in hoops, mainly because he's at a rather competitive school, so I get it. But he's falling back onto my heels, so in soccer, so I understand it. Let me pivot quickly back. I mentioned there were a couple of games. The games over Marion kind of jumped out at me. Interesting enough, they're not, I mean, if you look at them now, you're going to be like, well, that's not much of a record. But at one point, Marion had a record that, you know, many people were talking about, like, oh, what does this mean? And so the first matchup, when you beat them 76-48, I took notice. I think that was Marion's. Hold on. My mouse is not cooperating, so I'm not getting to the page. There we go. Yeah, that was their first loss of the season. Of course, they have now stumbled in conference play ever since. But listen, you got Benedictine ahead of you, MSOE, Edgewood, Concordia, and Lakeland, and 3 of those are on the road. Unfortunately, 3 of their last 4. There's still some work to be done, right?
Ton of work to be done. And, you know, a lot of those teams are battling for a conference tournament berth. Our conference allows 8 teams in the conference tournament, which, you know, that can be highly debated, but I do love it because it makes all the games in February extremely competitive, because the 6 through, 11 or 12 ranked team currently still has a shot. And a handful of years ago, when we were only a 6-team conference tournament, you know, some teams might not play quite as hard when you get to the month of February. but now it's just fun because every game is just a battle, and it makes preparing, days like today and tomorrow even that much more heightened as you get ready for the game on Saturday.
Two thoughts. One of them I'm going to have to put a hold on. You just said about the conference tournament size, but I want to go back to the point that your one loss is to Illinois Tech, who's 2-11 in conference, 3-17 overall, somewhat to the point that anybody can get you. But what was it about the Illinois Tech game? Because that one definitely stands out.
Hats off to Coach Gray. I think first and foremost, again, I don't think people realize how good the coaches and players are in our league. They've had a lot of very close games. I know they've had some injuries as of late, which may have affected, kind of their win-loss record. But, we came in and, we missed a few shots early. They did a good job just kind of get us off our rhythm. And, as the game went on, they played a little bit more confident. And we had the lead with 3 seconds to go and, found a way to lose at the buzzer, Dave. And sometimes that just happens, and that's the game of basketball. And that's what makes it special is you got to come ready every single night and, teams can beat you. And we've been in a lot of battles the last couple of weeks too, where it's funny. I get a lot of text messages saying like, you only beat this team by X amount. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm so thankful we just won the game because the other team played phenomenal and they're really good. But sometimes the general fan just doesn't get it, whether you're in the Big Ten, the Big 12, SEC, WIC, or the NAC. Teams are really good, and they don't get enough credit of how competitive and how much parity there really is in college basketball.
Question, you mentioned, there's debate over whether there's 8 in. There's 13 in this conference. 8 seems like a pretty reasonable number for a conference tournament. 6 seemed abnormally small. Do people want it smaller or larger?
I think it's at a good balance now. I think there was some debate, though, a while ago that they wanted to protect the top couple seats and give them a bye to the semifinals, which, there is merit to that. But there's something special about playing in February and March, and those conference tournament atmospheres are always really fun. So I always say if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And if we're meant to make the NCAA tournament, we're going to win 3 in a row, during the last week of the season.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I appreciate it, despite the challenges of the power outage, of joining us here on the show and giving us a little bit of insight on the Warriors. Please tell Skip Noon our best on his departure. Man, when I saw that news, it took me a second because I've been so synonymous. That name's been so synonymous with Wisconsin Lutheran. But in the meantime, congratulations. Heck of a season. Obviously a lot to go. 5 games in conference plus a conference tournament and hopefully the NCAA. Heck, at this point, maybe even an opening round hosting opportunity if you can keep going. But as always, we let the guests have that final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuned in?
Yeah, thank you for having us on. It's an honor for you to highlight our program and our student athletes and kind of showcase how special this group really is, Dave. And we just appreciate any attention we can get on D3 Hoops.
Well, thank you for the time. It makes it easier. I also, seriously, thank you for making the effort despite the power outage. Any better man might have said, forget it. We're not even, Dave, go find another guest. I'm sorry. But I do appreciate it. Take care. Hopefully the power comes back soon, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Make sure I click my audio. Aaron Annenson joining us from Wisconsin Lutheran. Congrats to them on their season so far. Too bad for the power outage. But again, Benedictine's going to be tough. Well-coached team. MSOE, Edgewood, Concordia, Wisconsin, Lakeland. These are all programs that are good. St. Norbert, they've got 2 games clear. MSOE, they're 3 games ahead of Concordia, Wisconsin. They're 3.5 games ahead of. Benedictine is not going to catch them, but they're in the top 6. So this is going to be a tough stretch ahead for the Lutes, and we'll see how they play it the rest of the way. Looking forward to seeing how the Warriors do. Well, not the Lutes, that's Pacific Lutheran. Wisconsin Lutheran Warriors. We'll see how it plays out. But I'm impressed. I think Wisconsin Lutheran's got a darn good team. Remember, they got wins over North Park by a large margin this year. Wheaton has not had a great season, but it was a large win. The conference eats up a lot of schedule, but they went down and beat Southwestern and Trinity, Texas in 2 around Christmas time. So this is a good team worth keeping our eye on. When we come back, we'll head out to the West Coast. We'll do a couple of things when we're out there. First, we'll talk to the Redlands Bulldogs and Eric Bridgeland, see how he's doing in his program, but also we'll see how maybe the fires have affected things in the SCIAC. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. We'll be back with so much more after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
I believe sportsmanship is a mutual admiration and respect for your fellow competitors. We all go through a lot to reach the point where we compete against one another. It's important to realize that. So once we're finally on the field or on the court or on the starting block, we look at each other as fellow human beings and not just competitors. Being able to recognize the hard work that other athletes are putting in creates a more positive and inclusive environment.
Division III allows you to give yourself to other things.
Having that free time allows me to pursue the things that I want to pursue.
Division III athletics affords students the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in the campus and in their lives outside of that sport.
It allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
Comprehensive learning is being able to adapt to experiences and apply the things that I learned. Being an athlete and juggling academics helped me grow as a person, and things that I've learned, I was able to apply it in another field, putting them into everyday life. Developing comprehensive learning helped me prioritize certain things to make sure I get to where I want to be.
For the love of the game, but for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, as we continue to roll along. If there's a lip sync issue tonight, let me know. We worked on some issues on our end that was slight, but when I look back at the video, it was much larger. I don't know why. I know we fixed it a little bit on the YouTube side. I changed the latency a little bit. I think may have changed things. But I don't know if it changed it for all of you, so let me know if it did work out. If you're watching us on demand, it doesn't matter. You can certainly send me a note. I'll work on it at that point. And if you're listening to the podcast, there better not be a sync issue, or that's another whole problem that I cannot fix. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us, hoopsville@d3sports.com. You can join us on the social medias. Again, pretty much everywhere it's at D3Hoopsville, including the D3. The exception to that is Blue Sky. We're just Hoopsville there, because we got in early enough on Blue Sky to not have to add the D and the 3. All right, so a team that I got to see out in Las Vegas, which I always enjoy at the D3Hoops.com Classic. It was our, 14th annual this year. It'll be the 15th next year. It's interesting because now it started and is at the same time, the same number because of COVID, and we call it annual because we're not going to lose the annual because of COVID. Anyway, teams we saw out there, Colorado College, who we'll have later on the show, certainly impressed. On the women's side, Redlands came out. Eric Bridgeland and his squad played 3 games. It's kind of a thing now. We've talked to teams about doing this. Come out and pick up an extra game if you need it. Wrong one. Just forgot who they played. We'll get it in a minute. They played a third out there as well against Redlands. They played 3 in 4 days. Might not have been their biggest test, but they certainly played very well, did Redlands, and impressed a lot of us, including myself, willing to put them into the top 25 as they continued to win along. Remember, this is now a program that Eric Bridgeland has overhauled for all intents and purposes. Maybe frustrated some people in the process of doing that, but results seem to be working. So to joining us on the Blue Frame, on the Hoopsville hotline, as soon as my system wants to let me use my mouse, it is Eric Bridgeland joining us here in studio. Well, he's not in studio, but you know the point. Eric, good to see you. It's been a long time. I don't think we've talked since you joined the ranks at Redlands, or if we did, we talked to you at the very beginning.
Yeah, something like that. Love you, Dave. How you been?
I'm hanging, sir. A little bit better breathing air out here than it's been out there. We'll talk about that in a bit. But again, saw you guys out, and I'll have to admit, we talked about the difference, and I don't want to dwell on it with you, but I think it's important. The difference with you and how you approach those games in Vegas with your team now versus then, and your team looked ready to go.
Well, I think you always approach it the same way, right? You take one at a time and move on to the next one. But for us, I mean, it's the first time that we've had in our years thus far at Redlands had a full roster. We've got 11, 12, 13 guys any given night that can come help us. And with our style of play, I mean, it's really important, right? Press, run. In years past, we've had maybe 7 or 8 healthy bodies, and so that's made it a little bit more difficult. I never mind playing 3 games in 4 days, but with our style of play, this is the deepest that we've been. It's been fun.
You leave Whitman, which caught a lot of people by surprise, shortly after your cohort left Whitworth, which I think also caught some people by surprise. You went down to Southern California, and I think what I took note of was that's where you were recruiting from anyway, right? Like, you've got experience. You were somehow pulling them up to northeastern Oregon, southeastern Washington, and saying, here's where you really want to play basketball. So you now finally go down there. Correct me if I'm wrong, because it felt like, one, you overhauled the program, got rid of some players you didn't think were going to fit within the realm. That kind of frustrated some people. There was certainly some consternation. But it felt like you still needed to take a little bit of time on the recruiting trail to get them to come to Redlands, because the SkyX has such great talent now that you still had to build that. It wasn't going to be an instant thing.
Well, I mean, first, let's let me clear up. Like, when you say get rid, we didn't get rid of it.
That's not a great term on my part.
Yeah, it was right in COVID, and players made choices to come back or to not come back, and better fits for them. So, I mean, it's really from like ground zero. Southern California is like its own country when it comes to recruiting, and I'm sure it's the same way for football and other sports, and it's definitely that way for men's basketball, and we're in the Inland Empire too, right? So even in the Inland Empire, there's a whole nother stream of players that maybe you just wouldn't notice if you just went to LA. So I mean, I thought I knew Southern California really well in terms of recruiting, and then you get down here, it's like, man, I only knew a fraction of it, right? So we've had a lot of success recruiting Southern Cal, and Redlands has made it a lot easier. People thought that Whitman was an easy sell, but the price tag and the proximity and the entrance requirements and all the above made it really, really tough. And we did our best with it. But things are a little bit easier here to attract maybe a bigger pool of qualified players at Redlands.
We should point out, you mentioned the Inland Empire. You guys aren't. I think that confuses some people. I think everyone thinks the SCIAC is tightly grouped in the LA region. I'm going to give a quick story. Per the Fires, reached out to a colleague of mine in Major League Baseball whose actually family had their house lost in a fire a couple of years ago, famously on TV. It was one that raced up the canyon. Every house around them burned. Theirs looks like it was going to survive. As the sun is setting, fire breaks out in the roof. His family's house kind of comes synonymous for that fire. I text him. I say, hey, I hope you're okay. I hope everybody in your crew is okay. He goes, oh, we're fine. I'm 60 miles away from the fires. And I went, but you're in, it's kind of like Anchorage. I've been to LA and I still don't appreciate how large that area is. And you're outside of that. Aren't you about halfway to Palm Springs, Indian Wells?
Yeah, no, that's about right. We're about 45 minutes to an hour east of LA on the way to Palm Springs. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because I thought about trying to get to a game when I was out there in 21.
Larger than what most people think.
Yeah. So that's my point is this is a huge area.
Yeah.
But it's also inundated, Eric, with not only the SCIAC, but it's inundated with Division II. It's inundated Division I. San Diego region is not that far away, and they've got two Division I and Division II. Matt Logie's been down there for a while. How do you stand out in such a crowded metropolis?
I will tell you from my experience, having been in Washington State, I mean, it almost seems where you're at that like the area gets under recruited. And like you always wonder, like, how can these kids not be getting recruited to a higher level? And then you like come to SoCal and you're like, okay, well, there's gonna be all these schools that you just alluded to that are on the kids you're on. But it's like, man, how are they available? How is there nobody else on these kids? So, I mean, I haven't really had that feel in terms of Southern Cal or Washington in our backyards where I've been recruiting in terms of, man, there's just so many schools on these kids. I've actually felt the opposite. And I think that's just because that's your backyard and you see more talent than maybe most people. So for me, I haven't really seen it like that or felt like that.
All right. So pivoting back to your team and this season, we see you out in Vegas, 3 games out there, win all 3. First program to win. First off, one of the first programs to play 3 games out there. So thus, by default, the first program to win 3 games out there. Hardin Simmons was the team I couldn't remember. 97-89, the solo game on the 27th. I barely remember it. That's no disrespect to you, but I had flown in that day. So I was a little bit out of it, to be honest. Mount Union game dominated a pretty good Purple Raiders squad. Then the New Paltz game, a New Paltz team that I think had a chip on its shoulder, wanted to prove some things, did pretty well there. You talk about a run and gun style. That's my term. Pressure defense with a high-tempo offense. I felt I saw the high-tempo offense. Defense in the half-court was pretty amazing. Was it just me, or did I miss maybe more of that full-court pressure I thought you might go with? Or is it because 3 games in 4 days, hey, we got to restrain ourselves?
I mean, definitely by the 3rd game in the 4 days, we were exhausted. But I mean, you've got to be able to guard in the full and the half. I mean, it just depends on the team that we're playing. I mean, like some teams really, really struggle against full court pressure. Other teams are really well versed in it, and so you got to kind of be like a Jekyll and Hyde and fake it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So it just depends on who we're playing. We played Hardin Simmons, who's on a crazy run right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're extremely talented and well coached, and it's like, well, they're a better half court team, so we better try to pressure them and make it a full court game. And then there's other teams that are really good in the full court that you want to make it a half court game. So it just kind of like depends on, or like for us, we have to be versatile enough to adjust to our opponent, I guess, if we want to be good to great, you know.
You're right about Hardin Simmons, by the way. Injuries in the first half of the season, kind of not really telling the story about them. But you've been on this run. Claremont Mudscripts beat you 99-97 mid-January. You get the revenge game on that 70-65 last night. But again, you were down double digits in that fourth. Tell me about this SCIAC this year, because the SCIAC, especially since COVID, but honestly, we knew pre-COVID, had gotten good. It's getting better, which, by the way, I think made that hill climb for you even tougher. You're now in second place in this conference, split with CMS. What is it about the SCIAC that we should know about?
Well, I don't think it's ever been any better with all the conference coaches that I visit with. I mean, literally, like Caltech's in a rebuilding year, and a Doc's proven that if he has a couple classes and they get to be junior seniors, that they're tough. The other 8 schools, they're all games. I mean, like there's not one night where you can go, okay, we can have a little bit of a letdown and like be okay. I mean, Whittier just beat Pomona. And Pomona's a monster, been a monster in this conference, so I'm actually really excited about it because there are so many good teams in the conference, and there's so many good teams, a parity of good teams, right? Like Claremont's a tournament team. I mean, whether
they make it,
whether or not we make it, whether or not Pomona makes, they got great guard play. They have elite Division I transfer shooters, grad transfer posts. They're averaging 27 and 12. I mean. So I'm excited that we're getting tested every night. And as you know, the more you get tested, the more you grow and evolve, so that when the tournament does come, you don't see things out of nowhere that you haven't seen yet, And being in the Northwest Conference for so long, it always seemed like it was Whitman, which was us, Whitworth, and then there was another rogue team that might give you some trouble, right?
Right.
And then you'd have some nights off, and man, if we just play well, that we'll probably be okay. That's not the case here. Every team can beat you. So you're on a truly a one-game schedule this year in the conference. And the coaching, as I've always said, is phenomenal in our conference. The coaches are really, really good. So I'm just thankful that the conference has got the talent that it does and the coaches that it has, because if we're able to make it through to the tournament, we will be truly battle-tested because of that.
Top 6 of 9 are all above 500 overall. 11-8 is Chapman, 12-9 Pitzer, 14-6 Whittier, 14-5 CMS, 17-3 UNCalU. Whittier is sitting fourth, 2 games behind you all. By the way, we won't even mention the fact that the women's program is now in charge, has a Redlands grad in charge of it, trying to turn that program around.
Kristen Dowling, she's a stud.
Yeah, I love Kristen. She and I go way back.
She was with us last year. No, she's the goods. She's so good. Yeah. No,
I felt. Listen, I love Kristen. She knows this. I didn't think the Pepperdine move surprised me. I understood why she did it. It's too bad it didn't work out, but glad she's back. But that's the thing. You are a game behind Cal-Lu. You're now technically a game up, or half a game up on CMS. Whittier's chomping at your feet. This is far from over. We had the NCAA tournament hosted the opening weekend last year out there. We've seen SCIAC teams do well in the tournament, knocking on the door of a Final Four. This is kind of reminiscent of the Northwest Conference when you were at Whitman, wasn't it? Like you guys were knocking at the door. It's not as deep. As you said, Northwest Conference wasn't as deep, but the top teams started showing nationally that they can do something. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, I mean, it was more of a 2-horse race, I think, up there, right? Whitworth's always been good.
Maybe Pacific or Lewis and Clark or somebody chewing.
Yeah, and then Whitman finally broke through to the Final Four. I mean, and I will tell you, and it sounds like part of the conversation that we had, whatever it was a few years on Hoopsville. I mean, we played Pomona up there, we played at Whitman, we played Claremont, we played Chapman, and we knocked all of them out in the tournament up there. Had we played them down here, I don't think that would have been the case, right? So the SCIAC's always been really, really good. As you know, it's tough to go on the road, especially in the tournament, and win. You could see the top half of our conference are all capable of winning 1 or 2 or more games in the tournament, in my opinion. And I agree. Think so much parity across Division III this year. I mean, it's wow, if you just get in, you got a shot. There's not just a handful of unbeatable teams. It seems like there's just a whole lot of parity nationwide to me.
I haven't talked about your team enough. We're almost out of time. Let me get my focus back there. Amari Ferguson leading the team, 13.9 points a game, 13.2 from Chosen Amadi. Lucas Gordon, 11 plus. Jake, I can never say his name.
Want help?
Yeah.
Hliviak.
What?
Hliviak.
Okay, I'm overthinking it. Hliviak.
There you go.
I'm overthinking the W. Thank you. 10.2 points a game. Kendrick Curry, 9.6. 8.3. Jace Boston. I mean, this continues. Davon Gates, 7.9. Like, you got a couple top guys, but there's a lot of depth in terms of who can score, who can play, who's not. If someone's banged up, someone else is going to step up. You're outscoring your opponents by 15 points a game. You're out-rebounding everybody by about 2.5. Okay, that's the stats. What do we need to know about this unit?
We're deep.
Yeah.
We can go 10, 11, and not just playing 10, 11 guys, but like guys that can actually make plays in games to win games. And it's the deepest team that we've had. We have great guard play. We've got great shooting. And our guys genuinely really, really like each other. They like hanging out. We had 10 new guys this year, 10. So, and then we had a couple guys coming off of injury. So it took a while with a whole bunch of bonding and figuring things out. But like, they're just great guys that get along, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid with how we're playing, right? And we got depth, and in our style of play, that's a big deal. So it's fun. It's super exciting for them. And I mean, I look at last night. I mean, we're in a battle with CMS, and we shoot 35%. I mean, we can't make a shot, and like part of that's due to their defense too, right? But we end up shooting 35% on the night, and then we end up coming back and winning, even though you shoot 35%, right? Just the depth of the pressure wears out teams. Not all teams, but that was the case last night, I thought. But it's just exciting. Depth and guys that can play that like each other. Yeah, that's a short answer.
3 of the next 5 at home. Cal Lutheran coming up Saturday. Obviously, don't have to say it, big game. At Laverne, then Occidental and Chapman at home before Whittier on the road. Kind of a mixed bag there. Interesting enough, though, you still got the top teams and you've still got battles, but a couple of them you get to be on your floor.
In the first half of the conference, the preseason poll, right? You had Chapman, Pomona, Claremont, and Cal-Lu, right? And we had all those teams on the road. So it was brutal. It was tough. And so now it's all coming back to our side now. Chapman comes here, Claremont just came here, Cal-Lu comes here, and that doesn't mean anything. It's just nice to have home games down the stretch. And like I alluded to earlier in the conversation, and like any coach will know, you're on a 1-game schedule. I mean, like we played Laverne in the first game back from Vegas, and we're down 31-13. So, I mean, every team is going to give you a really good game. So we got to just focus on one game at a time. Some are at home, some are on the road, whatever. But 1-game schedule, and you got to bring your best effort, or you might be sitting at home in a couple of weeks.
Your department gave some great stats that I forgot to go check, so bear with me a moment. 14 seasons with 17 or more wins. First time that ever happened was in 1917-18. Now 3 consecutive 16-plus win seasons. That's the only time. The only time that happened before that was 78-81 under Gary Smith. I don't think he had gone to the system yet. 52 wins in the last 3 seasons, tied for the second most in that time frame. Lee Fulmer had it at 64 between 59 and 62. First D3 Hoops Top 25 ranking was in 2023, got up to 17. You're borderline on breaking that. 4 straight weeks in the top 25 poll. Your program under you is 7 weeks ranked in program history. All of them. You're all of them ranked. This has changed this Redlands program. Was this why you came to Redlands? Is this why you were maybe recruited to come down there to take a good historic program and make them relevant, not only in the SCIAC, but nationally?
I think if you've ever been on our campus, you would agree. I mean, it's breathtaking. It's an easy sell. I mean, it's you got
That's what my brother has said.
No, I mean, I'm just saying it's like you're on vacation. Like every day of the year, it's blue skies. It's 70, 80 degrees. We have so many different useful majors, so many academic pathways that you can go through. We got great graduate programs. There's so many ways to get quality student athletes into school at a reasonable price and on a gorgeous campus in a great conference. So, on top of that, my wife's from the Bay. We have we have a 7th grader and a junior in high school, and so it was just time to get down here. There's a lot going on. We love it, but like definitely, you're like we could get a whole nother level of athlete here. We thought, and that's been the case. We're ridiculously athletic, and in our style of play, that plays. So it's just fun. It's fun to have a full roster and playing well and having the guys like each other and getting something out of it.
It's Walla Walla is not the place for everybody. We hinted at it a bunch of times. I got to get it out before we go. How have the fires? I know you're more inland, but how have the fires affected everybody's mentality? I know fires are a known quantity out there. This was on another level, and it impacted schools you guys all know.
Yeah, the main ones were Occidental, Caltech. I want to say Pomona and Claremont maybe, but mainly Caltech and Occidental. Nobody else was really, hit with that physically, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, the amount of games we're playing, like 6 games in 13 days. I mean, like the ones that we were not impacted by having to postpone those games. Redlands wasn't, but there's other schools that have. So they're playing 7 games in 17 days and, whatever the math is. But it's crazy. High academic institutions to be playing an NBA schedule, it's a lot. So hopefully for the time being, the fires are behind us and that everybody remains safe and can rebuild what they lost,
Yeah, it's certainly an impressive thing. I saw somewhere early on in the fires, Caltech is where the Jet Propulsion Lab for NASA is located, and I think 200 plus of their employees had lost their homes in the Palisades fire. It's staggering to consider, that's just them versus everybody else on that campus. So, Eric, appreciate the time and the insight on the Skyac. One of my favorite races, and when I can't sleep, which is every night, I tune in a little bit, though. It's been a little hard this year, though. Finally might be able to tune in a little bit more from now on. If you know. I'll tune in on Saturday. But thanks for your time. Good luck the rest of the way. Look forward to seeing how this race finishes. As you know, always, we give the guests the final word. Final thoughts for those tuned in.
I said it 4 or 5 years ago, or whatever it was, 3 or 4 years ago. Don't sleep on the Skyac. The conference has talent. It has great coaching. I'm expecting a couple teams to make runs, and I only think that's going to go up and up and up, in years to come. So, thanks for the coverage, Dave. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Look forward to catching up down the road.
Sounds great. Have a great one. See you.
Eric Bridgeland joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Yeah, Skyac's good, folks. We've said that for a number of years. Remember, the win in Emory was not a surprise, right? It was a surprise to many. But those teams have continued to prove it. And unfortunately, a great opportunity maybe in 2020 was brought to a close by COVID, but there have been other opportunities. Don't be surprised if we see a Skyac in the men's championship, maybe the women's championship eventually. Soccer has seen Skyac teams get to titles and win national titles. Something's changed in the Skyac, and we shouldn't overlook it at all. We'll take another break. When we come back, we will pivot to women's basketball, and we'll talk to Bethel about how the Royals are doing so well. You're watching Hoopsville. Back with more after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
I believe sportsmanship is it's a mutual admiration and respect for your fellow competitors. We all go through a lot to reach the point where we compete against one another. It's important to realize that. So once we're finally on the field or on the court or on the starting block, we look at each other as fellow human beings and not just competitors. Being able to recognize the hard work that other athletes are putting in creates a more positive and inclusive environment.
Division III allows you to give yourself to other things.
Having that free time allows me to pursue the things that I want to pursue.
Division III athletics affords students the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport.
It allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
Comprehensive learning is being able to adapt to experiences and apply the things that I learned. Being an athlete and juggling academics helped me grow as a person, and things that I've learned, I was able to apply it in another field, putting them into everyday life. Developing comprehensive learning helped me prioritize certain things to make sure I get to where I want to be.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
All right. Oh, we're back. Stand by. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully my audio, I don't know, maybe my audio shouldn't have been there during the break. Welcome back to the show. I'm Dave McHugh. If you got questions for us, you can always email us, tweet us. Lots of other ways of getting a hold of us on the bottom of your screen. If you're podcasting with us, you should know us by this point, but look for us on social media. Look for Hoopsville or D3 Hoopsville. You'll find us along the way. Women's basketball now. Don't forget, coming up, both committee chairs will join us to talk so much. But let's talk women's basketball. And if you're looking at the top 25, a team that hasn't been there since pre-COVID, the Bethel Royals, and what is an augmented MIAC now. They finally have gone to that off-balance, what we call ODAC-style scheduling, where they don't play nearly as many games in conference. That's freed up some things a little bit. And for Bethel, it's certainly led to a pretty good season, though. They got a big game coming up on Saturday. Joining us on the Hoopsville hotline to talk about it, the aforementioned head coach of the Royals, it's John Herbricksmeyer. Coach, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time. It is good to see you.
It's great to be seen.
It's always good.
COVID, but we're glad to be back.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. This is a show that talks about teams that may have surprised or at least have emerged maybe before others. I think a lot of, MIAC, we got distracted with St. Thomas for a long time, and Gustavus Adolphus certainly has garnered a lot of attention over the last few years. They're not the only ones, obviously. You guys had a great season in that COVID postseason shortened year. You were 26-2 that year, 19-1 in conference play. Unfortunately, lost in the opening round to Bethany Lutheran. I'm sure you were eager to make up for it the next year. That never happened. So this feels like it's been a long time in coming for the program.
It has. The COVID didn't treat us very well. Just the way things were with a shortened season, and then during COVID, we had all sorts of major illness issues, whether it was mental health, physical retirement of players because of injury. It's hard when back-to-back, actually 3 years in a row, we lost our best player for one reason or another. And we still were relevant, but we weren't relevant in the top of the MIAC. And to now have a group that's come together that I thought would be our greatest weakness has become our greatest strength. And that's the depth of talent from upperclassmen through freshmen. And I wasn't sure how all the classes would weave together, but it's become one of our greatest strengths as the season's unfolded.
Well, you've won 10 in a row, longest streak since the year we talked about when you won 20 in a row. We mentioned you're back in the top 25 for the first time back then. You got as high as number 8 that year. You won your 400th game against Hamlin back in early December. 326 wins just at Bethel alone. And again, as we mentioned, got a big game against Gustavus coming up. You've got a half-game lead on them. They're 12-1 in conference play, maybe, and just as a theory, because you beat them 72-58 back on the 18th of January. There's a lot going well, but if Gettysburg and others will remind, the second time against a really good team is always the toughest. Your focus is there, I'm assuming.
100%. In fact, I was on the dock to go 3 hours each way recruiting tonight. And with that game on the docket next, that 6 hours in a car didn't happen today, which made this a little bit easier. But that preparation is first and foremost. Gustavus is very good. Our league has a very good league, and they've been the class of the league the last 3 years. First time around, we played by far our best game since 2019-2020 season, and we got them in their place, but we know that they are ready to go, and they're a very, very good program.
You two have basically kind of are the top tier. Then it's Hamlin, St. Benedict, Concordia, Moorhead, St. Scholastica is kind of the next tier. And then it's St. Mary's, McAllister, St. Cat's, and then Carleton, Augsburg, St. Olaf's along the way. So, again, 13-0 is all well and good. You're now playing this shortened conference schedule, so you only got 5 games left of an 18-game schedule versus, 22, I think, prior to that. The Gustavus game on Saturday is important, but you still got Moorhead ahead, Hamlin, St. Scholastica, and St. Ben's. You can't overlook this finish either.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, with the unbalanced schedule, if you look at who we play versus there's 4 schools you don't play twice.
Right.
We're playing what looks to be right now, if the playoffs started today, we're playing all the playoff teams twice. No one else in our league is doing that at this point. So, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. If you want to be a conference champion, you got to beat the best in your league. And we've got 5 more really important games, all against teams that'll be in the conference playoff picture. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, 3 losses this season. Lacrosse got you back in November, 73-57. Scranton nipped you end of December, 84-42 down in Daytona, and Stout got you 62-55. Listen, Scranton's a really good team. Lacrosse and Stout aren't layovers either. But what have you all learned from those games that you're still applying now?
Well, the lacrosse game was really early for us. We were still figuring out who we were, who we could be. Obviously, a road game. Fourth quarter, we went in with a lead. We gave up 6 threes. Gave up 6 for 6 from the 3-point line. That will not get it done on the road. And that taught us some things. And from there, we played pretty well until we took the trip to Florida. Things continued to fall into place. Played a very good Amherst team. And in the first game in Florida, what I didn't know when we scheduled it was that Scranton was going to be sitting on 10 or 12 days rest and watch our game against Amherst and be fresh. And Dave, they blitzed us. They were the far better team that night. They were physically better. They were more locked in. They taught us a lesson in basketball that night, but our kids also learned there's a different level that you're capable of for a full 40 minutes. And I don't think we would have been as ready to play at the high level we played at Gustavus a few weeks later if we hadn't had to go through that hurdle of a really locked in team kind of taking your lunch money from you.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. If it makes you feel any better, they're still undefeated at 20-0. They're whooping up on everybody. So we look at this unit, you talk about what's working so well. You got 3 players in double figures. Ellie Smith's at 13.8, Anna Garfield 12.2, Emily Erickson 11.7. Emily's, by the way, coming off the bench in 18 of the 20 games and doing that. Some players, that just works really well. That's what the stats tell us. What aren't we seeing in these stats? What about the rest of the team do we need to understand as well?
Well, it's the best team I've ever coached here. And that is saying a lot because that 2019-2020 team was very, very good. But top to bottom, what we don't have to do with this team is we had to be really strategic with when we brought in a couple of guys, practice players, and figuring out how we're going to do scout team because of, lack of numbers, lack of depth after the starting unit 1 through 15. And we've even got a couple kids injured who are pretty good basketball players. We can field a unit that can play basketball. And it's really been our strength is that depth. We play 9 in the main rotation. We have 2 freshmen that would have been main rotation kids on any of the 22 other teams I've coached at Bethel. And we're trying to find minutes for them because the sophomores through seniors and grad students are playing so well that it's really hard for a freshman to get to that level, even though they're very, very good. So that's really been the key is the depth of talent from freshmen through our 2 grad students. And I'd be remiss to not bring up Lydia Hay. Obviously Ellie and Garfield, senior and grad student, are 2 of our leading scorers, but Lydia came to us from St. Ben's as a grad student, and she's been amazing. She's been willing to fit into any role we needed. And a surprise to us has been just how good she's been defensively. She's been our kind of lockdown defender. I've put her on everything from point guards through centers. And statistically on Synergy, she's been our best defender start to finish of the season. And she's really been unselfish in going from a role where she averaged double figures a game at St. Ben's and been willing to take on more of an unsung hero role of being our best defender.
Notice Schmitz did not play last night against Carleton. Is that a concern going into Gustavus? Is it a one-off? Is it maybe just a rest night?
It was a DNP coach's decision for load management, we'll call it. She's been battling a little bit of an injury, and it just wasn't getting better. And it was getting a little worse week by week, day by day, game by game since the Gustavus game. It literally was just a little fluke thing that cropped up the first practice after our Gustavus win. And at first it didn't seem like anything, and then it sort of was turning into something. So we shut her down this week, and we've had her on the bike and doing a lot of rehab. And we knew earlier in the week we weren't going to play her against Carleton, and it was hard. We had tears in my office because she wants to play. We want her to play. But in the long run, I just said, Ellie, are we going to get to where we want to go if we can't beat Carleton without you?
Yeah.
and kind of through tears, she said, no, probably not. And I said, well, then let's get you as healthy as possible for Saturday against Gustavus.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, no disrespect to Carleton.
No, absolutely not.
Gustavus is the target, right? You got to focus on that.
Yeah, and she's our best shooter at 6'1". She's our best shooter, and Carleton's going to play all matchup zone. But in reality, our feeling was we have to have her closer to 100% to be our best against Gustavus, and we needed to be able to get by one at Carleton without her. And our other kids rallied, and we were 10 for 13 in the first half from 3 against Carleton on Wednesday night. And now we're in position to get ready for Gustavus.
We talked about the schedule being a little unbalanced. You're not playing 4 teams twice. My personal opinion, I wish you guys had, not you, but the conference had gone a little bit further, maybe gone 2/3 in this instead of 3/4, it feels like, giving you a couple more non-conference games. But overall, you've gotten more. What do you think of it?
I love it. I've been one of the spearheads of that. I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum, you and I and Gordon and others, because when I first came into the league coming from Cornell, I was like, we play how many games against each other? 22 25ths? Are you kidding me? Well, it just, our league is so good, but at the same time, that was really hurting us. And I think the new NPI will help with some of that, because being able to drop your games after your 15 wins, if you're at the top, does take away some of the pain we were feeling with the 22. 18's a good number. I'm with you. 16 would have been my preference.
Yeah.
But we have the purists who still want to go back to a double round robin, and I'm trying to beat the drum of, hey, we're in the position we're in. Like last year we did get 2 in. We got Concordia and we got Gustavus in, still playing the double round without the NPI, but it was nip and tuck.
Oh, it was last pick.
I mean, it was, and
not a lot of upsets.
They were a very good team, as they showed playing an Illinois Wesleyan team.
Yep.
You know, after getting down 10, it stayed at 6-10 the rest of the way, and Illinois Wesleyan's the number 2 team in the country right now.
Yep.
Our league is very good, and Concordia is very good. They lost a senior, and they're still a very good team. We've got that trip coming up next week, so we're not sleeping on anybody.
Well, John, good to see you. Thank you for the time. I know it was a little bit of a bounce. I appreciate your efforts. And good to see you also, because I know you've been through the ringer a little bit in the last few years, but nice to also see the team playing so well. Look forward to seeing how it plays out from here. Big game, as we talked about on Saturday. Hopefully get some time to watch it. In the meantime, we always give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts for those tuned in?
Hey, just want to thank you and your crew at D3 Hoops and Hoopsville for all you do for Division III basketball in general, but especially Division III women's basketball. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. Stay warm as well. I know it's going to get chilly up there again soon, and, well, enjoy it at least.
It's already here.
Well, there you go. Good to talk to you. Talk to you soon again.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
John Herbergsmeyer joining us from Bethel. Great to chat with him. For whatever reason, there we go. Our system didn't want to cooperate there for a moment. Yeah, so 16 out of 22 now doesn't seem so bad. Or 18 out of 22 doesn't seem so bad instead of 22. Listen, my personal opinion, those who want the double round robin with 22 games, I think it's just lazy. You don't want to schedule out of conference. You schedule 3 games. You don't want to schedule anything more. You free it up. Get yourself a chance to go somewhere, maybe for a holiday tournament. Go to 16. Schedule those other 9 games. It's not the end of the world to schedule those games. There are plenty of opponents in the area. Let's go. I think 16 makes more sense than 18, but I digress. Take another break because we are way behind schedule. We got to get out to Colorado and talk to the Tigers out there about women's basketball. And we still have the committee chairs ahead. Listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3 Hoops. Back with more after this. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC 1927. That's NABC.com or NABC 1927 on social media.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all. It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
We are the coaches of women's basketball. We are leaders and teachers, dreamers and winners. We are professionals who conduct ourselves ethically and with integrity. We place the education, safety, and well-being of the athletes we coach above all else and teach them the fundamental values they need to succeed in life. We are coaches united for the good of our game and those who play it. We are the WBCA.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go into personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
For the love of the game, but for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com. We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
I used to never really talk, ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Football has taught me a lot throughout my life. It's definitely had a huge imprint on who I am as a person. Competing at a Division III level created that opportunity for me to go to college. Not only was I the first one in my family to graduate college, but I was really the first one to even go. Being the first one, I'm breaking that cycle, and now that I've graduated, I'm not sure what's the next step, but I know I have a lot of doors open. And a lot of those are open because I played football and ran track here at Otterbein.
The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball. Gonna jump out of that because we finally are back. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. Technical gremlins. Zoom did not like me. There's a quirk. If you ever own a MacBook, folks, they're great. I work on PC here. I've got 5 monitors. You can't see them. I then work on a MacBook down below because I got other work going on there. I got 3 monitors going there. We bring in Zoom there so I can hear them. And it's a long story. We'll show you. Maybe we'll do a behind the scenes someday. Point is, I need to grant permission to make things work, and MacBooks love to put it on a monitor you're not on. I wasn't looking at this monitor. I was looking at... Anyway. We'll move on. Colorado College women's basketball has emerged from the fray. They're now the ones to watch in the SCAC after years of the Trinity, Texas road show being so impressive. It is interesting what Catherine August has got going up there at Mile High. They love to show that off, by the way, when you walk into the gym. They are going to tell you how high up things are and that they already have the advantage that way. It's worked out. Saw them in Las Vegas like we did Redlands, and they certainly impressed out there as well. To talk about it all and to make us look good, it's the aforementioned head coach of the Tigers of Colorado College. It's Catherine August. Coach, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm super excited to be with you tonight. And, Las Vegas, the D3 Hoops Classic, amazing. Such a good experience. We had a ball.
Well, when you win, that's a good step.
Oh. It does help.
Wins over SUNY New Paltz, we should point out, along with Susquehanna in the first game you had out there with a day off in between. I didn't get a chance to see you because, I just get hyper-focused on what I'm doing, but I certainly watched. We're going to get to that in a moment. I want to back up a step because I think some people might be thrown off because I certainly was a little bit. Many might know you as Catherine Menendez, yes. North Central grad, we should point out, of 2008. But now you're Catherine August. The E is silent. Not that we need to pry into private lives, but I've got nothing else better to do. Can you give everybody the backstory on the Menendez August? Because, by the way, I know the answer, and that's why I wanted to ask it.
No, it's a perfectly great question and happy to address. In 2019, 3 years into being the head coach at Colorado College, had the pleasure of welcoming back one of our best alumni in program history, Melanie August. So we met, we were friends. Long story short, a couple years ago, began dating, and we were married about a year and a half ago. And so my lovely wife, Melanie, was actually the 2009 D3 Player of the Year at Colorado College, long before I had ever heard of it. Justin's Player of the Year, and she is a phenomenal counterpart to this whole thing every step of the way.
Yeah, it's the Jostens part that I think's the coolest. If you can't beat them, folks, marry them, right? It's just that simple. Again, this program's clicking. I got to watch it in Vegas. I know Susquehanna. That's a good team in a very difficult conference. You beat them 74-45. New Paltz, pretty good team in a competitive conference, handed them 76-61. Susquehanna, by the way, just for the record, 11-9 right now, 8-5. Maybe not having the season they wanted, but they were 18-9 last season. Gabby Holko's team is pretty consistent. You guys have been consistent. Your losses this year are Gustavus Adolphus by 6. We just got done talking to Bethel about how good Gustavus is, and Texas Lutheran on the road on the second half of the weekend there from Vegas. You lost that one by 11. Otherwise, you've beaten everybody who has come your way. You do have a Trinity, Texas game looming on the distant horizon. You have not played them yet, I don't believe, right?
Nope, not yet. It's shifted in the conference this year. We'll only play them once, and it's actually the last game before the conference tournament. So
and you get them at home.
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be key. But tell me, what has this season been? Because this program's been building towards this. I forgot. What year did you get there?
2016.
Okay, so 2016. Okay, 2-23. Yeah, rebuilding. I mean, let's be honest. Back-to-back 2-win seasons. It wasn't like you had the cupboard full. 4-21 or 10-17 the immediate next year. 10-17, 12-14, 14-12. I'm going to skip the COVID years. 16-12, 19-8, 28. This has been building. How's it been from your perspective?
Honestly, it's been so refreshing and joyful to watch our team continue to believe every single year, and not just believe more, but adjust their work ethic, adjust their level of competition and practice. Like, it's no longer we hope we're good enough. It's we know we're good enough, and what do we have to fine tune to put ourselves in the position to have success on any given day. I mean, our whole practice today was about being our best selves because Austin is going to give us their best game tomorrow night.
Well, that's right. I mean, you've got, luckily I picked you guys because I knew you'd be at home. You've got Austin and Dallas coming up. That's the other key of this. You've got 4 of the next 6 at home. Your only trip will be down to Louisiana and Arkansas to play Centenary and the Ozarks. So there's a lot of things going your way, but really the schedule has gone your way, right, Coach? Because you have played, sorry, I should have done this ahead of time. I forgot to do it. You're going to play 8 of 12 at home in the second half of the season, and the first half had quite a few home. This is just, everything's coming together.
I'm very lucky that programs want to make the trek to Colorado Springs, and they find a lot of really fun things to do out here. I think team building and good restaurants and beautiful scenery. So I'm lucky the teams want to come in the non-conference, and it gives us great competition like Mary Hardin Baylor, et cetera. And then, yeah, I just got lucky with the SCAC schedule this year. Like, we are enjoying the late home run for sure.
It's, by the way, if my memory serves, last year with Trinity, Texas, or one more year?
Last year with Trinity.
That is the last year. So you'll lose Trinity, Texas, and Southwestern to the SCAC. I'm sorry. No, that's the old SCAC. They're going to the SAA. That's right. That's sarcasm. Lord. I want to talk about coming to Colorado College or Colorado Springs in a moment.
Okay.
But this team is what I find fascinating. You've got Zoe Tomlinson, who jumps off the floor to anybody watching. 23.2 points a game, 13.8 rebounds a game, shoots 56% from the floor, 80% free throw shooter. By the way, she still hands out assists, gets a fair number of steals, and of course she has blocks. Maybe not as many as you would expect. I was actually surprised that her number is only 39 in 19 games. Got to work on the three-point shooting. She's 0 for 3. I mean, come on.
She loves to let it fly, though.
Right. She jumps off the page. And we'll give Tomlinson in a moment her due. But Kayla Mackel, 16 points a game. Healy Bledsoe, I'm going to talk about her in a minute because someone buried the lead on us in Vegas. 9 points a game there. 7 points a game from Nelson. Strength's got 16. Yes, Tomlinson, we'll talk about her in a moment. But the rest of this team is what stood out to me in Vegas.
Good. I'm glad. I think we are learning to take the best offensive threat we have on any given night, any given possession. And that's something we're working on to this day as we sharpen for this weekend for conference tournament. It's teams are rarely going to play us, thank you, Zoe, straight up one-on-one. And so it's up to us to be great readers. What are we taking that the defense is giving? How can we exploit, make them pay? And how can we do that within what we do without adding a bunch of stuff, right? Just getting really solid at what we do has been good for us this year. And I have an amazing staff that I've gotten to work with. Coach Lisa Gould, for goodness, the last 8 of my 9 years here. She's unbelievable. She masterminds so many of our defensive schemes. And then Coach Drew Mitchell just joined us from Co-College last year after their 20-win season, and really tweaking a lot of our offensive system and things there, which has been fun because it's more creative, more movement, more, pressure relief for Zoe, I think, and also just fun for us to play.
I did double take when I saw him. I was like, oh, I forgot he moved. All right, Tomlinson. We joked about the 0 for 3. That is a joke.
Yeah.
But what is it? when I watch her play, she just looks like this, for lack of a better term, beast you are not going to stop. Not because she's imposing, but because she's just got a way about playing. I don't want to say talent. That's too easy. There's a way she plays. It just doesn't look like you're going to be able to stop her. But what is it that makes her tick? What makes it work so well? Because, again, shoots well from the floor, shoots well from the free throw line, rebounds on top of that. It does everything else. She's not one-dimensional.
It's true. And, okay, two amazing things about Zoe, aside from talent, as you mentioned. I mean, her drive as a competitor. Like, we went around the circle in practice today, and I said, like, what's going to make practice the best part of your day today to every person? And she said, competing and winning drills. And I'm like, love that. So spot on for the course. Like, she wants to win.
Well, wouldn't have been my answer.
About that. And then the other part that really bolsters that is she is such a workhorse. Every summer she goes home, she goes to intern, she does whatever she does in New York City, and she comes back better. With some aspect of her game is like significantly heightened. One year she came back with a mid-range jumper. One year she came back ready to be a more physical presence in the post. And it's fun to see her keep adding to her game. And then you add that she has phenomenal hands, and, our guards can really get her the ball anywhere. She's a great nose for the ball rebounding, and she's just fun to watch.
Yeah, she's from New York, everybody. Just for the record, a senior. By the way, one bone to pick, please list the heights. Oh, you're killing me on the website. It's hard to appreciate as a broadcaster getting ready to understand who Zoe is when I don't have that detail. But anyway, Crystal Lake, Illinois, Durango, Colorado, Edina, Minnesota, Bend, Oregon, Houston, Texas, Glenwood, Washington. I haven't repeated a state yet. Evanston, Illinois, our first repeat, just north of Chicago. I was born at Evanston Hospital. Get that out of the way now. Arlington Heights, Illinois. Needham, Mass. Henderson, Nevada. Gulf, Illinois. Colorado Springs. Oh, someone came from the local city.
Yeah.
I know the Air Force Academy is located out there, but as one who works for Navy, that's not a plus. Sorry, another joke. I just couldn't resist.
Had to do it.
What is the hook? Is it because there's a D1 women's soccer program and D1 men's ice hockey program? Is it because it's gorgeous, because the Rockies are amazing, one of my favorite places in the world? What is it that because you're in no man's land when it comes to Division III?
Right. That's a really interesting way to put it. I think it's everything you just said. To add one to that, we have the block plan at Colorado College, where, as a high academic liberal arts institution that is highly competitive and allows us to thankfully look for great players from across the country who would want to come here and pursue this level of education. They take one class at a time. So for a semester.
Oh, so you in Susquehanna.
Okay, good deal. Yeah.
Susquehanna does the same thing. Continue.
And Cornell in Iowa does too. So there's very few schools that operate their academic system on the block plan, and ours love it because it's immersive, it's all in, it's 3.5 weeks intensely on one subject with that class and that professor. And it's great as an athlete because you're in class 9 to noon every day. And then after that, eat lunch, go to study hall, get extra shots up. I mean, do your thing, take a nap before practice. It's very high autonomy. So you add that academic freedom, if you will, to the D1 sports and the resources we have because of it. And I mean, shout out to our athletic director, Leslie Irvine. She treats us every bit as well, as highly, as competitively as our D1 colleagues. And that's really fun for us to be around. They're all working together. And we're at the base of Pikes Peak, and we get to travel like a Division I because we are geographically isolated. We fly to every game. And that makes for very fun road trips and a cadence of basketball season.
Yeah, Susquehanna, by the way, similar plan.
Okay.
Real quick, let's see. Add drop on January 20th for the first 17 and 14-week courses, so it's a little bit of a hybrid. Last day to declare, blah, blah, blah. I got something here. Midterm break on February 28th. And they're now in school break beginning of March. Somehow I read this and it said that basically. So similar plan, a little bit different. But yeah, I find that fascinating. I think I would have succeeded at a program like that much better than I did. And I kind of wish I knew about them when I was looking at colleges. So yeah, I love that concept that you only focus on the one class.
Mm-hmm. And ours love it too. And that's why they honestly
Right.
what differentiates us a lot of the times. And it's really fun to watch them then explore. Like Zoe's finishing her thesis right now. She's not technically in a class, right? Kyle Rowland's had that as well. And so our seniors have kind of shifted through these different blocks of having like 3.5 weeks to a month off where they're really focused on like executing their final work as an undergraduate.
Yeah, that part I may not have enjoyed, but it still would have been.
They love it. So,
but the SCAC is a beast, and it's ever changing now that the conference as well. Do you guys feel that tug a little bit of being that kind of in no man's land Division III school that is the SCAC the right home? Do we move somewhere else? The worries of maybe some, or is that the right place for you all?
I mean, I feel very lucky to be part of a conference, and I know kind of the struggles and woes that can come from the independent life and things like that. So we are happy to have great games to play. I think Concordia, McMurray, Ozarks, they've all brought unique wrinkles of competitiveness into the league, and it's been really refreshing to have to play teams we've never faced before. Or I think I played Concordia maybe 8 years ago, right? But that's been neat for our team as well.
Frequent flyer miles helps too, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Exactly. Hold on. I got to scroll to the bottom. There used to be a time I used to go to your website and I saw there was an airline that was a sponsor. I don't think they're on there anymore.
Technically, Southwest works with us, and Shorts Travel is amazing. Shout out to them.
Oh, you do shorts. Interesting. So does the NCAA. The one you buried the lead on, Bledsoe, none of us felt like assuming it. None of us looked it up, but the name sounded familiar, and I know he's out in Oregon. You guys just keep the secret that Healy's dad's Drew Bledsoe?
I wouldn't say we think of it as a secret. We think he is an awesome dad and supporter, and that family is absolutely amazing. They're at every game they can be at. They've hosted us in Oregon when we're out there before playing Whitman, and just an amazing family. So we're very lucky to have Healy.
Please tell me they weren't in Vegas.
No, I think they were.
They were?
Wait, hang on. Nope, they might have been in they might have been on a trip.
Good. I feel better now.
You're testing my brain right now. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I feel better.
Ago.
I feel better.
Good.
If I'm not mistaken, he has a winery, I think, out there in Oregon.
It's beautiful. Yes, Bledsoe family.
I've been to Bend, by the way. I spent the night there this summer on my way to Crater Lake.
I've never been to Bend, actually, but we went in Walla Walla, Washington. They have a location there.
Yep. I knew he had a place in Walla Walla as well. Sorry, I just had to get that out of the way because, nothing like finding that news out 3 weeks after I broadcast a game. Listen, you got a lot ahead of you. This team's playing really well. Expectations are high. Again, 4 out of 6 are going to be at home. Austin and Dallas, and then Shriner and Trinity with Centenary and Ozarks sandwiched on the road there. I know you want to be at home. I know you want to make sure everybody comes through you for the conference title and maybe get the off chance of hosting an NCAA tournament. The MPI is good enough. Does it mean going 6-0 here? Does it mean going 5-1? What? I know it's one game at a time, but what is the real understood expectation?
That's a really good way to put it. We truly have been one at a time. We're not afraid to talk about Trinity. We weren't afraid to talk about TLU, right? Like we definitely have certain games highlighted on our schedule. But the reality is we had a great first quarter against Austin, and then they just played amazing the last 3 quarters. And so I think they're coming in here extremely confident, as they should be, right? And so we're just trying to earn the opportunity to keep moving forward. And I think we absolutely can run the table, and that's what we want. But slow going one at a time. We want a good practice. We want a great shoot around tomorrow. We want a great film session later tonight. All of that.
As I talked about with Meg Barber at NYU on Monday, you're in this weird, funky section where you played them and now you're playing them. So you just saw Austin, you just saw Dallas. That doesn't mean you're any better prepared for them. It's actually funkier because you got to get them to realize, we just played them, but.
I think our team is actually taking that as such a challenge because we watched film maybe 2 days ago and it was like, okay, what could we have done different, better every possession, right? Like great that worked. However, what if it didn't, right? What's our second, third option? And so that's where we're trying to really get stronger as a team, knowing that they're not going to do everything the same either, our opponents.
Fair. Oh, you got a Johnson's winner you could always fall back on to pull out some tips and tricks and anything.
And I do often.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure she loves it too. congratulations. Really impressed. I'll admit, when you came out to Vegas, I was like, this is going to be my litmus test. I want to see how good they really are. And that's how Susquehanna came. I walked away going, okay. That was more than I anticipated. By the way, come back out to Vegas. We would love to have you again. Bring the men's team with you. In the meantime, congratulations. Thanks for coming on. Pleasure to chat with you. I know it's hard to leave Colorado, so enjoy the hell out of that. And as always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those tuned in?
Awesome. Really appreciate you having us on and just the representation of our team as we've grown and worked and gotten the right people who believe. Shout out to our Colorado College community who's rallied behind us at every turn. And honestly, to all of you at d3hoops.com, I have been a follower since probably, 2004 when I started in D3 World at North Central. And so
you may feel old.
It's a little bit surreal to get to be on here talking to you. I really appreciate it. So thanks for everything. And shout out to my awesome team and staff because they are just working their tails off and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Well, Catherine, it's been a joy to chat with you. I'm sorry it took us so long. And again, safe travels. Take care. We'll look forward to catching up another time.
Thank you. Have a great night, Dave. Bye.
Bye. Catherine August joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Great to chat with her about the Tigers. I'm telling you, if you have no excuse, go to Colorado College to watch a game. Take another break. When we come back, this is a supersized edition. The show would normally wrap up, but we've got an in-depth conversation with the committee chairs. John Lacey and Bethany Danley join me on a pre-recorded segment, talking everything you could imagine about about committee work, NPI, and all that. We'll talk more about what they dive into coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. Back with a lot more still to come on this supersized edition of Hoopsville.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
I believe sportsmanship is a mutual admiration and respect for your fellow competitors. We all go through a lot to reach the point where we compete against one another. It's important to realize that. So once we're finally on the field or on the court or on the starting block, we look at each other as fellow human beings and not just competitors. Being able to recognize the hard work that other athletes are putting in creates a more positive and inclusive environment.
Division III allows you to give yourself to other things.
Having that free time allows me to pursue the things that I want to pursue.
Division III athletics affords students the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport.
It allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
Comprehensive learning is being able to adapt to experiences and apply the things that I learned. Being an athlete and juggling academics helped me grow as a person, and things that I've learned, I was able to apply it in another field, putting them into everyday life. Developing comprehensive learning helped me prioritize certain things to make sure I get to where I want to be.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from South...
Welcome back. Sorry about that. A little odd there. For some reason, we lost our our microphone. So the ad break was running instead. Welcome back to the show. If you got questions for us, though we won't be able to answer them in the next hour, though we can certainly try. You can email us, hoopsville@d3sports.com. Join us on social medias. You can join us on our live streams as well, whether it's on Huddle, Blue Frame, or you can join us on our simulcasts on Facebook and YouTube. We'll do our best to answer questions wherever and however we possibly can. Yes, Phil, 5 monitors on my PC. I've shown pictures of it, I'm pretty sure. All right, so usually we talk to the committee chairs at the beginning of the year or somewhere in the early part of the year. And then about this time of year, we might bring them in to talk a little bit before on the marathon show before the regional rankings come out. And then talk to them a couple more times as things progress. Obviously, with our delay on getting on the air, we didn't get a chance to talk a lot this previous part of the year. But we finally got a chance to sit down with them. Originally, was going to do it Monday, but with our schedule change, we had to move it to midweek. We recorded this interview with them midway through the week. With so much going on, there's so much to talk about. There's national rankings, and there's what else? There's, and I mean that seriously, by the way, there is national rankings to literally talk about. There's also, sorry, brain freeze as my brain literally can't remember what I wanted to mention. There's other things that people are dealing with that makes for an interesting conversation when it comes to regional rankings. Because believe it or not, regional rankings exist. There's also the NPI. There's bracketing. There's going to be all these other what ifs down the road that people have to figure out anew. So these chairs are doing all of that. And we had an in-depth conversation that's going to be in 2 parts. The first part's going to dive into really what is the committee been doing in the offseason, how they dialed things in with the NPI, and other nuances. And then we'll get to bracketing and all that stuff a little further down. But here's our conversation exclusively with Johnny Lacey, head coach of Baruch men's basketball and the men's committee chair, and Bethany Danley, who is now the commissioner of the Ohio Athletic Conference and chair of the women's committee once again. Now joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, it is the committee chairs for the men's and women's side of basketball. For the men, John Lacey, head coach of the Baruch men's program. Know John pretty well. He's been lurking in the system for a long time. Bethany Danley joins us once again on the women's side. She's now the commissioner of the Ohio Athletic Conference. Last time we knew her, she was in the athletics department office at Washington and Lee. And Bethany, I'll start, well, besides a quick hello, we'll have to start with some quirks with you. But both of you, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Bethany, quickly, we should point out a little quirk here. You come out of Region 6, I believe. W&L is located. Now you're in Region 7, but which kind of is, throws some curveballs and things, but you're still Region 6. Can you explain to everybody?
Sure. It's an interesting scenario that I don't think is encountered super often. So with my new position, as you mentioned, I changed regions. So there actually had to be a waiver request submitted that went through both the nominating committee and the champs committee to allow me to stay on the committee as the Region 6 person. I think there was a couple of different factors that played into it. One, I think part of it is that it's my last year. 2, I think the fact that I was the chair last year and I was in position to be the chair again this year played into it. 3, we've moved away from regional rankings, so some of that regional element is less present than it's been in the past. So I still have strong relationships with people in Region 6 when it comes to asking people to submit bids and get site reps and stuff like that. Also, with the championship being in Salem, I have a long-standing relationship with those folks and the folks in the ODAC, so I think that played into it as well. So there was a lot of layers to it, and I just feel very fortunate that the Women's Basketball Committee supported me in that, and that both the nominating committee and the Champs Committee pushed that through to allow me to serve one more year, which I'm really excited about.
I'm biased. I kind of like that you're still chair. Love our conversations. We should point out, if those who don't know, before WNL, you were in the ODAC front office for a short period of time, keeping JJ and Brad in line. All right, you talked on it there. I'm going to segue there first. We'll dive into MPI here in a moment, but with the advent of the National Power Index, pairwise, for those who want to be snarky, regional rankings were supposedly, everyone thought, kind of taking a back seat. But I know I was surprised in the fall and will continue to be surprised. We still technically have regional rankings. That's going to come into play in a little bit with another question. John, I'll jump to you. How have the RACs, Regional Advisory Committees, evolved, and what purpose do these regional rankings thus play?
Sure. I think the RAC continues to evolve. We're in a new era with the NPI, and for better or worse, right now it's here to stay. The Championships Committee recommended and implemented this change, and we on the National Committee, we are adapting how we do things, with NPI as the primary selection tool, but also our RACs as well. We've just begun our weekly RAC calls this week, and we've continued to emphasize the importance of RACs. And whereas the selections are not being made or recommended by RACs or even us on the National Committee any longer, we feel that the RAC work is still valuable in the sense that they are the experts in their conference. And the biggest thing that we're asking of them right now, in addition to serving as site hosts if schedules allow once we get into the tournament, is really just making sure that the data is entered properly into the NPI system, and that the numbers are being output correctly. For us on the men's side, we're really focusing on making sure that that homes, away games, and neutral site games are being recorded correctly, so that our weightings, which differs a little bit from the women's side, are all being weighted correctly and teams are being ranked properly.
Yeah, Bethany, pivoting on that, they still have that weighted element. You do not. That's the same weighted element we're familiar with from past years under the previous SOS system. Is a similar setup on your women's side, and just double checking the data?
Yeah, it's very similar. And so on our calls, we had our RAC members look through the schedules for every institution in their conference, cross-reference it with what was in MPI, confirm game outcomes, wins, losses. Also make sure, and John alluded to this, that if you've got opponents who are non-divisional members, making sure those games are not counting. If you've got somebody who is a provisional member or an exploratory member, confirming whether those games should or should not count, depending on where they are in that process. Those are things our group has really been paying attention to as they go through and check through the schedules. It's a little more cumbersome on the men's side, checking the home and aways, making sure that the data for those multipliers is correct, where our people are still checking that. It doesn't have the same implications from a number standpoint because we have no home away multiplier.
Sure. For those wondering, we will be having a future show on more the in-depth of the NPI after 1 year. So we'll go into the roles of how the RAC have evolved. So I'll move on to the NPIs itself. Your two committees, obviously, this past offseason had to make decisions on how you were going to set the quote-unquote dials of NPI. And having talked to a lot of people in a lot of different mediums and sport, etc., I felt like this offseason there was a lot of we don't knows or we're not sures when dialing those dials in. Bethany, I'll start with you. How comfortable were you as a committee to understand that what you were setting as a dial, case in point, 15 games to be kind of the benchmark, and please explain that to people when you answer, that's what you guys wanted to do, and it was going to get you the data results that you wanted.
Sure. So the women's basketball committee was subjected to me making them have a lot of meetings to make sure that we understood exactly what was going on. When we were given the deadline of, I think it was the middle of June, we had to have our dial set. Maybe it was early July, I can't recall. Sometime during the summer, we had to have the dial set. I told them we're going to be meeting every single week, and every week we'll look at a different dial to make sure we understand exactly what it is. So that was the charge that I provided to our group. I had some conversations with people who knew significantly more about the NPI to make sure I understood the database. And then I ended up creating a lot of spreadsheets and charts for our people to reference on all the different dials, just so that we could fully conceptualize what that was. I think starting from ground zero and understanding the concepts was really hard. We were really intentional in figuring out what the formulas were for all the different numbers, what the different numbers meant. And we used data from past years to see how it play out. We weren't trying to duplicate that necessarily. We were trying to have a good comprehensive understanding of what it was that we were looking at. You referenced minimum wins, and I think that's probably the dial that's confused more than anything with the general public. Is a lot of people think that means you have to win that many games to be eligible for the tournament, which is not actually the case. Right. What the minimum wins indicates is if you have not yet reached that threshold, every single win that you have is going to count towards your MPI score. Once you exceed that threshold, so for us, once you get that 16th win, for the men, once you have above 12 and a half wins, then you are able to drop wins that are not helping your average. So that's kind of a hard concept for people to grasp if they can't look at actual numbers. When we've been educating both the full membership in women's basketball as well as our RAC members, I actually have charts that I show them. So for the people who are visual learners out there, they can actually see why you would want to drop a win, how it's actually bringing down your average. So that's something we talked about a lot on our side. And part of how we landed on 15 was we looked at historical data. We looked at what the first team was in the ranking who only had 15 wins. And on average, it was the 80th ranked team or something like that. I think one year is 72, one year is 81, and one year is 90, something like that. So in general, any team that's going to be in contention for an at-large selection on the women's side typically has enough wins where they have opportunities to drop games that might be bringing their average down. So that was one of the things we discussed in the context of the minimum win discussion. And we also looked at it very comprehensively in conjunction with the other dials that we ultimately landed on.
John, same question. How did you guys, in terms of comfort, feel putting these dials together? And where did 12 and a half come from?
Yeah, well, I think Bethany made a great point. We weren't trying to replicate where we've landed in the past. We've been very confident, I think, in the work that our committees the last few years have done in terms of what we valued as a committee in terms of selections and how we seeded teams, bracketed teams, and selected teams for the tournament. And it was a lot of trial and error and just playing with the system and trying to, for a while, it took some work to, understand what each of these dials meant and how if you moved one thing, how it would affect another. But we wanted to make sure that what we valued as a committee the last few seasons, it was consistent with the dials that we set this year. We feel we did a pretty good job with where our dials landed. Bethany was a great resource, and our outgoing chair, Luke Ficurzi, last year in terms of, a lot of back and forth and conversations and collaboration with the women's side as well. Because while there are differences in our tournament, we felt very strongly that, we should philosophically, in some ways, be consistent with how our tournaments work. Basketball, while there's differences on the women's side and the men's side, ultimately, we wanted to have some consistency with the women while also having the flexibility to have, the ability to tweak our dials. For us, the 12 and a half, again, it was just a lot of trial and error. We wanted to make sure we had enough of a team schedule, really look at their body of work. We wanted to see a bigger picture of that body of work. So we weren't comfortable with that being set in 10 or 7.5 or some of the other options we had in the dials. And we kind of split the difference, and we didn't want to go to I think 15 was the max that we were given as an option. So we landed at 12.5 where, there was the opportunity for, wins that would hurt your NPI. We didn't want to have that on a team's resume, but at the same time, your schedule is your schedule, and we wanted to give the best picture we could as to the entirety of a team's schedule, reflecting in where their ranking ended up being.
Devil's advocate, John, 12.5 is half of 25, but if you're in a conference other than the UAA and you're a good team, you're playing 26, 27, maybe 28 games before you hit the NCAA tournament. That 12.5 becomes a below 500 value. And arguably, that gives a team who wants to bolster their resume an opportunity to maybe throw in 3 really easy wins that they know they can toss out. It won't impact them. It won't hurt them. Whereas on the women's side, this is my interpretation, it's more like, listen, you still, to your point, John, your schedule's your schedule. If you're going out there and playing cupcakes just to bolster this NPI and make the number look good because you're going to toss these wins later, have at it. So it almost feels like a bit of an out for some programs. Or, to counter that, is this going to help maybe the smaller conference schools, or not smaller conferences, lower conference schools, who kind of get shrouded a little bit because they play a bunch of poor teams in their own conference? They can eventually throw some of those wins out.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we found it was pretty consistent on both ends. We as we played with the system and tweaked the dials and looked at different outcomes, we didn't see major differences one way or the other. We felt like where we landed at 12.5 didn't positively or negatively impact the teams from the higher conferences, while also not completely ignoring the teams from the lower conferences. We found it was a pretty good middle ground in terms of being beneficial to both types of teams.
Quickly, you said you had different levels. Did it go from 12.5 to 15? Could you go on 13, 14? You know what I'm saying? Could you have picked a number that got you at least above 500 for most teams that are playing in conference tournaments?
Yeah, we had some options there.
So then that pivots me to the next question for both of you. Was there any concern? You're locking these in, as I understand it, for 3 years. Please correct me if that's wrong, because we want that information. But locked in for 3 years on decisions you made last summer with no true relevance of how that impacts things. I'll get to another question on that in a moment. So my question being, was there any concern that you're making these decisions on 12.5 and 15, we'll go there since we're talking about it, and it's locked in? After 1 year, you realize, we really need to tweak that, but you can't. And Bethany, I'll start with you.
Sure. I don't think concern is the right word to use in the context of this discussion. One thing our group talked about is there are plenty of other people out there who are going to have opinions on what women's basketball should do in terms of the dials.
Fair.
All the decisions that we made, we had a rationale for every single decision that was made, and it was based on the research that we did. And without showing you like the several Excel charts that I made our group.
I know some people who would like to see them, Bethany.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. And they could agree or they could disagree with how we did it.
Sure.
But we had rationale based on historical data and how we made our decision. And so we felt confident in what we were doing. Is there another way to do it? Sure, absolutely. There always is. We've had this discussion for years with the regional rankings, right? And I think that conversation is going to continue. I think you're seeing that through fall sports and everything else. And at the same time, And I told our group from the beginning, whatever it is we decide, we need to have a reason for why we decided. And we did for every single decision that we made. I know we feel confident in what we did. And it's really interesting, actually, because when I had our group, and John alluded to this earlier, when I had our group go through our spreadsheets, we looked at women's data and we actually looked at the numbers that we were selecting, what it would do with the men's data. And the numbers that we selected, if it was applied to the men's data, our rationale for why we were making those decisions didn't necessarily look the exact same for the men. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion out there about why like sports aren't having the same dials, why men's and women's soccer aren't the same, why men's and women's basketball aren't the same. That's totally fair. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the same dials. At the same time, the way that those dials are applied to those different sports, there are some differences. That's not me advocating one way or another for them being the same or different, but it's just a stated fact after having looked at those numbers applied in different scenarios. So back to the original question, no, there was no concern on our end. We felt good about what we did. We knew that people would have differing opinions, and at the same time, we had a rationale for every decision that we made.
Well, and the concern I have question is more along the lines of, were you concerned that you're going to make this decision, go through the first year and realize, oh, you know what, to be honest with you, we shouldn't have done that, but you're screwed, you're locked in for a couple more years?
Sure, I think that's fair. And I think if you asked to a committee, everybody probably thought that in some capacity because nobody's used this system. And I think that's reasonable. At the same time, people did their best to do their due diligence. Yeah. I know John and I were chatting the other day. I think we both feel really good about what our data looks like right now. Now, we're not to the end of the season. We're reaching the threshold, and the men have been here for a little while. We're reaching the threshold on the women's side where we've got a whole lot of teams who are hitting that 15-win mark.
They'll start jumping around.
Yep, so they're starting to drop games, and those rankings are really starting to form as to a little better indicator of what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. But we feel really good about where we are right now. We talked about it yesterday as a national committee. And again, others will have differing opinions, which is okay. I think it's something where there's no right or wrong answer. You try to just do the best you can in making decisions that have sound rationale based on the data you're looking at.
John, same. Was there worry about locking things in? And so far, Bethany may have forgotten, that's fine. Is this a 2 or 3 year lock?
It's in place for 3 years.
Okay.
So the discussion, so that after 2 years of data, so 24, 25, 25, 26 data, there will then be discussions about whether dials should change, but it wouldn't apply until after 26, 27. So
you could have the conversation after 2 years, but it won't impact things until after 3 years.
Yeah, and that's a scheduling thing, and that's something that's been requested from the membership from the get-go, which was one of the frustrations from the start. They don't want to review it after 1 year of data in case you've gotten a year that's an anomaly in whatever capacity.
Yeah.
So there will be 2 years of data when the national committees look at things, and then that next year is when changes could be applied.
Yeah, I'll get to the concern. I understand certainly after 1 year. John, just worry about what you're locking in?
Yeah, I don't know if worry, again, I don't think worry is the right word, but I think we all knew we're entering into a new world here. And we're doing the best with, the time we have to evaluate and study this with the data that we have, which may not necessarily, past data may not necessarily predict future data.
Right.
So, in order for this to work properly, we studied it as much as we could. We collaborated with not only Bethany and her committee, but we spoke with other sport committees as well in terms of, the pros, the cons, the negatives, where we may have issues. But we know that this is a trial and error right now. And, we're closely watching, what the dials look like and how do they evolve over these next few weeks. And then we'll continue to, study it and observe it next year. And when we are given the opportunity to change dials, if necessary, we'll be ready to do so. But it's not so much of a concern, but, we were given the time that we were given to study it. And we didn't have the opportunity to do this over a year or two in real time as a tool, for selection rather than the tool for selection. So, right now we are just doing the job that we've been given to do. And, I don't know if it's worry, if it's right or wrong, but we're doing the job that we've been tasked with.
You segue nicely for me. Thank you, sir. I have been an advocate, many know this, that this should have been paralleled with the old system for multiple reasons. One, give you all a chance, so Bethany didn't have to do as many Excel sheets maybe, to see it in real action. And okay, if we played with this, okay, here was our rationale over here. I understand how that is here. How do we want to play with our dials and give a chance for that to come out? Also, at the same time, everybody sees the NPI compared to regional rankings and all that. But thirdly, coaches had scheduled. They were done. They were all based on this other format. This data is going to be based on those schedules. And by the time we get to year 3, those schedules will have been drastically changed. So I get the point of membership. Don't change it every year. But John, there is concern there that you guys will see data this year or have this dialed in based on scheduling that may not be realistic in a year or two. Do you wish you had this in parallel at least for a year?
Well, what Bethany or I, individually or collectively want is kind of a moot point, right? Like this was not something we decided. It was
but you certainly have an opinion on it, I'm sure.
And we're happy, to wear our flak jackets here and take the fire from anybody who has it in terms of NPI, whether it's the right move or the wrong move. But you look, we all would have liked time to study. We all are very serious about making our tournaments and our championships the best that they could possibly be. We worked incredibly hard, a lot of hours, probably more so than any other committees have worked, in this transition to get this about as right as it could. Would we have liked more time to study it? Probably, sure. But, I think there's real value in the NPI. And I think, as we're watching it play out, as we continue to play out, I think we both feel pretty good about where our numbers are. And we felt, at least on the men's side, and Bethany, you could speak for the women, but we don't want it to be a drastic change in scheduling for coaches. We wanted it to reflect the philosophy of our previous committees, because we feel we've done a great job in terms of selection and for us on the men and in all of our iterations and all of our playing with the dials. By and large, we were really only looking at 2 or 3 teams in any given year that may have gotten into the tournament where they wouldn't have gotten in under the old selection process. So I think regardless of what system you use, we're dealing with a very small number of teams, and I feel that the committees have done an incredible job in getting the right teams into the tournament. And we feel with the NPI, we're generally going to have the same teams that we would have had under the old selections.
Bethany, anything to add to that?
Yeah, first of all, everybody's playing with their existing schedule this year. So nobody had a chance to change anything. Second,
but they did build the schedule based on one mentality, and they don't understand. They wouldn't understand how that was going to be different. Like the example on the men's side has been I think Calvin or somebody else. I'm blanking now. Who under the old system schedule looks awesome. Under the new system, they're getting killed.
Sure. Yeah. Here's the thing though, and this is probably a pretty unpopular opinion, and I'm sure that people would try and debate me on this, which is fair. I don't think scheduling is going to look that much different, particularly for the teams at the top. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of sport groups about this. In my new role, I've enjoyed the conversations with our different sport committees who are trying to learn the system. I've had the opportunity to talk to our RAC people and just more broadly conversation with basketball coaches. I think what your scheduling strategy is going to depend on where you are as a team. And so for all the teams who historically are at the top looking to host, what their schedule is this year is exactly what it's going to be moving forward, because they need to be playing really competitive games. They need to be winning those games, and they need to be winning games where they're going to get bonus points if they want to host. And you look at who those teams are, teams who have scheduled really difficult schedules this year are probably those teams. Because if you're not scheduling some games and winning them where you're getting bonus points, you're not going to be a top 16 team. And if you want to host sectionals, you definitely need to be playing games against the absolute top competition, because that's where you're boosting your your MPI score with wins above top competition where you're getting strong bonuses.
Fair.
So scheduling is not going to change at all for those people. I think the people where scheduling could change are the people who are right on the bubble trying to get into the tournament. For those people, in the past, there's always been an element of trying to really emphasize their strength of schedule, because that criteria was weighed pretty heavily with different sport committees. And that was something that was always taken into consideration. Now, winning games matters. And so if you're trying to get into the tournament, you're, in 30 to 50-ish range for the basketballs, you have to be winning games. Because if you're losing games on the men's side, they got the 25-75 ratio. When you're calculating that MPI score, you lose a game, that's 25 points you're not getting. On the women's side, we have the 20-80 ratio. That's 20 points in your score for that game you're not getting. That matters as you're looking at what your average is. So winning those games when you're a bubble team is essential. And so I think the scheduling strategy could change for those people, but the people at the top, what they're doing this year is going to be the exact same as what they're doing next year, because they have to be beating good teams if they're going to put themselves in contention to host.
Quickly, either one of you explain how the losses play a factor here.
Losses matter a lot.
They always matter. The losses will always count towards your NPI score.
Unless.
Thank you. That's what they always count on the NPI. The only things that are removed from the NPI is the lowest ranked, for lack of better determination, win if you get over the threshold. Am I right?
A loss doesn't count if it helps your NPI score. So
a loss doesn't count.
I'll give you an example. So on the women's side, if my team, so right now in the NPI, NYU's ranked number 1.
Right.
If you lose to NYU right now, I think you get like a 52. That's your NPI score for that game.
Okay.
If I am a team and my team NPI score is a 50, I go play NYU and lose to them, I would get a 52 for that game. That would increase my NPI average. So that game does not count for me. That loss does not count because it's helping my NPI average. You cannot have a loss that helps your NPI average.
I understand what you're saying. You could literally encourage a team to go play behemoths knowing they're going to lose because it won't hurt them.
But they have nothing helping them. So
fair.
Right now.
So you got to balance it.
Sure. If you go and look at a team that is ranked in the 400s for men's or women's basketball, and you click on their ranking and you see all their data there of all the games that are played, there are some teams right now where their record that's being used to apply their score is 0-1. That's because their NPI score is the value of the worst loss that they had, because every single other loss they had would be increasing their score.
Okay. Sorry about the delay there. My computer didn't want to advance. So there's your first part of the conversation we had. That last part I think is the most interesting. Losses don't count if it's worse than your NPI. And that's the part I think the data guys have to explain a little bit better. It's certainly one that I have to understand a little bit better as well. I understand the premise. It's hard to wrap your mind around, right? That a loss won't count if it, right? Or it does count. That's the part of this NPI that I think is the hardest for everyone to grasp, understand, etc. And the difference between the men's and the women's is certainly interesting as well. We'll be learning more and more about this. And I emphasize this, and I've said it a number of times during the segment. We are going to go kind of in depth on this once the year is over, and we get a chance to see how these numbers and how this system worked in the first year, what could have been done better, what can be improved, etc. as we move forward. But we're not done with the conversation. There's a lot more still ahead. We'll talk bracketing and all of that jazz still ahead on this edition, a special edition of Hoopsville. More to chit with John and Bethany coming up.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
We are the coaches of women's basketball. We are leaders and teachers, dreamers and winners. We are professionals who conduct ourselves ethically and with integrity. We place the education, safety, and well-being of the athletes we coach above all else and teach them the fundamental values they need to succeed in life. We are coaches united for the good of our game and those who play it. We are the WBCA.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media. System doesn't always like me. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. I am your host, Dave McHugh. We're in the middle of our conversation with John Lacey and Bethany Danley, the committee chairs for both the men's and women's national committees. So we've gotten a sense of what NPI is, how it came along, how they dialed things in, how they figured out what they wanted for this year. What does this all mean moving forward? Now that NPI numbers are out, bracketing is already on the minds of everybody. Who gets in and how they'll be bracketed and all of that. In what I thought would be the shortest part of the conversation ended up being almost as long as we dove into the topic and learned a lot about it. John and Bethany even admitted there's some parts they're still learning. Let's talk down the road, because at some point we got to start talking bracketing. You guys have to start looking at bracketing. From what I've read, even though both handbooks are written differently, which I talked to them off air about, really wish we could get our handbooks to look a little bit more similar on the common stuff. It looks like both sports will protect the top 8 seeds in the bracketing process. John, what does that actually mean?
Sure. So I'll speak for the men's committee, and I'll let Bethany answer if she or the women's committee have interpreted this differently. For us, the championships committee has approved a protection of the top 8 seeds. They define protection, as I know it, as none of those top 8 having to play each other until the quarterfinal round.
Okay.
The number 1, the number 8 seeds will be placed in the same region and won't play until the quarterfinals.
Okay. So 1 and 8, 2 and 7, all in the same region.
As best we can.
Okay, we'll get back to that. Go ahead. Okay. Bethany, any difference with that?
That's accurate.
Okay. Let me take on the next step of that. Will we see 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, 4v5? Is that locked in, or because outside of top 8, I know geography plays a role, or is geography going to play a role in these, Bethany, where we might see 1v7, 2v8, whatever combo package, hopefully not 1v2?
I have not gotten total clarity on that. All I know is that through conversations that we've had, geography matters. I know that we can't have people flying all over the place.
Right.
I think that depending on what those seeds and teams are, you try and maintain that as best as you can. I do not think that I have heard from higher ups a definitive 1 and 8 are in the same pod, 2 and 7, and so on. John may have heard different. I don't think I've ever heard those words come out of people's mouths who are the decision makers when it comes to the financials and how many flights are allowed.
John?
Yeah, I geography is going to play. I think there's still a lot of factors at hand. Who's able to host? Where are we able to put teams and place teams? What we are trying to avoid, and from what we understand it from the championships committee in terms of protections, is that we want to keep those top 8 away from each other until that second weekend at minimum, at the earliest. So once we get into that second weekend, obviously we've lost some control of our bracket. We have upsets, we have hosting capabilities, we have a number of things at hand that we may not necessarily be able to plan for. So we have to get back to the drawing board in some ways after the results of the first weekend.
We'll dive into this a little bit more when we're not in this segment, but women's soccer, as an example, looking back, 1, 17, 8, and 10 were in one region or one quad. 4, 13, 5, and 12 were in another. 3, 16, 7, and 9. 2, 14, 6, and 11. So to your points, or not understood, we aren't necessarily saying 1v8, 2v7, but we are trying to keep them separated to some degree. Let me throw a curveball in here. When it comes to hosting, outside of other priorities, and those other priorities being men's and women's, which we'll see a lot of, men have priority first weekend. No, women have priority first weekend this year. Men have priority second weekend. Outside of that, and outside of a school just not putting in to host, which caused some consternation, I know, in volleyball, and it has in other sports. They may not be able to host. Will NPI dictate who hosts, John?
I mean, look, for me, I think we would like to, have as much bracket integrity as we possibly can within the constraints that we are given. We as Bethany said, we can't fly teams all over the country. We have, it's something we're going to have to figure out in real time at certain points, and do the best with whatever situation we have in front of us. I think the one nice thing about our tournament is we do have, where I think it differs from Division II, is we have more of a national tournament, and we are given a lot more flexibility in terms of bracketing and seeding and travel, than the Division II tournament. I think it's one of the things that makes our championship great. But it's also not the Division I tournament where we can just put everybody on a plane and maintain perfect bracket integrity. And even that, you're always going to have people who are unhappy with seeding, location, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the task of our committee. And I think one of the things where if we're not being bogged down with so much time spent on selections as we've been in the past, it might be something that we have the ability to be a bit more proactive in looking at where these conflicts may arrive and building a bracket that will work geographically as best as we can make it work while maintaining integrity of seeding as best as we can.
Bethany, same question, but with the premise of last year there was all this consternation. There was on the men's side as well with Case Western, but certainly made headlines with Transylvania, that they felt kind of hosed that they were not hosting the second weekend. I'm going to preface that, I guess after the fact, by saying we all knew this was coming. It's all part of the Division III rules. I found it a little disconcerting and a little bit insulting that the president and AD, who know better and who've sit on committees who've agreed to this stuff, were screaming bloody murder about it. That said, is this setup going to allow for that not to happen, or could it still, based on bracket design and where teams are based on their MPIs, still happen where a top seed might end up on the road the second weekend due to no other factors, i.e. hosting rules and all that?
Sure. I'll start with the top 16 to start. I think everything that John said was accurate. And I think that what we really take on as committees is the goal is going to be for those top 16 teams to host and to try and create creative brackets that allow for that, depending on who those 16 teams are and who the other 48 are. That may or may not be feasible. And on top of that, what those rankings are, again, is we try and use rankings in a manner to create the bracket now that we have actual rankings. So there's a lot of factors at play there. So I certainly think we both would say the intent is for those top teams to be hosting. Again, this year it's easier for us on that first weekend than for John's folks, simply because it's a women's priority year, and there will be some overlap there. That's going to be the intention. It's probably not going to be a perfect science depending on who those top teams are and who all the other teams are and who we compare where. The second part of your question, in an ideal world, everything works out and whoever the top remaining seeds are, they put in bids and they can host. The reality is that we as committees are trying to project out who the teams are who could advance in an effort to try and allow for those top seeds to host should they advance. But there's always things that are going to come up. So last year is an example, and I think it's a good example to bring up. We had two situations in our bracket that we discussed well in advance that we knew that if two or three different things happened, the top seeds in those pods would not be hosting sectionals. And one of them was a little bit more of a long shot than the other. But we as a committee discussed, if these two or three things play out, this is the situation that could present itself. And one of those came to fruition. Our group advocated to allow the top seed to host, but due to what the parameters are that are in place, it didn't play out that way, as we are all well aware. So those factors are still in place. And I know John and I have talked about this extensively. Our group continues to talk about it. We're really going to be doing everything that we can to create a bracket that is competitive, that holds to the rankings, that allows teams to host who are some of the top teams, and that if we reach a point where those top seeds advance, they have the opportunity to host sectionals. That's going to be the intention. But there's a whole lot of factors at play here, particularly now that we have hard and fast rankings. They're going to make that a really complicated process, and it's probably not going to be perfect. That doesn't mean we aren't attempting to do that, but there's unpredictability. There's things that you can't forecast. We're going to try and account for those things. And at the same time, certain teams win and push through, and you never really know what you're going to end up with.
Do either of you have any confidence and or caution looking at how men's and women's soccer worked out this fall? 5 flights on the women's side in the opening weekend, 5 flights on the opening weekend in men's side. Men did have 3 flights in the second weekend. Granted, they could have had 2 more to protect the 4 seed to our conversation. Instead, it went to the 7. So that's the cautionary side. John, I'll start with you. Is there at least a sense of, okay, we might have some flexibility here based on those flight numbers? Or are you worried they spent all the money?
Yeah, look, it's a lot easier for us to proactively protect teams that first weekend because that is where we have the most control of our bracket. Once the games start, Bethany and I are at the mercy of game results. So,
right.
At that point, we're in triage mode, right? And it's a good thing we work in athletics because that's what we do all the time. It's constant adjusting and tweaking, and just dealing with the unexpected, right? Like that's just the job. And for me personally, when we talk about protections, I think I would prefer the flexibility to protect our top teams be further down the line because that's where we can't predict, right? Like we can maneuver some stuff that first weekend because we have more options. We have more flexibility. We have 64 teams. When we get into that second weekend and it's cut in half, those options are cut in half as well. And we're very much at the mercy of who wins and who loses.
Bethany, same question. I don't know. I don't have the women's flights off the top of my head in the second weekend.
Yeah, I agree with everything John said. We are going to bracket in a way to try, and honestly, our bracketing principles aren't going to change a whole lot from what they've been in the past. We're going to try and create a bracket where you've got teams playing each other within the mileage parameters who typically don't play each other. Leagues, a mixture of leagues. We're going to try and avoid the overlap. And this is what we've done for the past few years. And we're going to try and project out. So in an ideal world, those top seeds are hosting the second weekend should they advance. With that said, do we have a little bit more flexibility on flights now? Maybe. I think we're similar to John, where we'll probably try and advocate for some flexibility on flights the second weekend if the anomaly pops up like last year, where we need one more flight so the top seed can host. We will put our eggs in that basket as a committee most likely, and we're going to try and do that by what our bracketing is for that first weekend. John said it perfectly. We have significantly more flexibility in what we're doing that first weekend than the second weekend when we're at the mercy of how things have played out.
Yeah, certainly. How games play out has a huge factor. We could dive into that rabbit hole, but I'll be good. The one thing that was a bit concerning, the reason I brought the MPI question up, was football had a glaring one. They had Ursinus and Kings. Ursinus had the higher NPI, but Kings was apparently higher ranked in the regional rankings in their region of Region 1, Ursinus Region 2. Yes, they're from the same state. Whole different conversation. That's back to these regional rankings that come out. Is this going to be based, Bethany, on the regional rankings, or is it going to be based on the NPI, or was that just an error?
I don't actually know the situation you're referencing in football. All I know is the decisions that we're making are going to be based on NPI and regional rankings. While they are put out, it's informational, and regional rankings are ranked based on NPI. So there's going to be no difference there. But regional rankings are simply informational. They have absolutely nothing to do with selections. Everything with selections, bracketing is going to be NPI rankings.
John,
and to just piggyback on it, regional rankings, this is the major difference in the selections this year, where regional rankings played a huge part in the selection process last year, where a team could be blocked out from selection based on their regional ranking, where this year it is strictly national and NPI.
I appreciate that. I'll be fascinated to see what happened with that football scenario when it finally is resolved. We've all talked behind the scenes. The one disadvantage to NPI is it feels like it's taken away from things that we've enjoyed in Division III. And I started mentioning this a year ago when it was brought up in a tweet by a commissioner about ice hockey, that no one's waiting on pins and needles when the brackets are revealed. We know who's in. The only thing we don't know, though, with everything we have, we're going to have a pretty good reasonable guess on a lot of this, is where teams are played. We're going to know who's in and out, barring some weird decision on your parts, to be completely honest. John, that removes what feels like has been a mainstay of the entire NCAA. Well, maybe not Division II, and for the record, there's a lot in Division II who are now complaining the way they do things. But Division I, right? There's a camera to see if they made the show. In Division III, we started seeing videos of whether they made the show. That's been a part of that excitement, John, and that's now gone. Is there consternation or any issue with that?
I think so. I mean, look, there's give and take in every situation, right? I don't envy the decisions that championships committee and people on other committees that I'm not involved in have to make, because, I'm sure they don't envy the decisions Bethany and I have to make in the committee work that we do. It's hard. It's challenging. You're juggling a lot of factors. You're trying to improve efficiency and maybe, utilize, financial resources in a better manner, but you're going to have to take away from something else in order to accomplish that. So, yeah, I definitely think, it takes away a little bit of the excitement of the tournament and the build up and are we in, are we out? Like that's a great moment for a student athlete to find out if they're in. But ultimately, our charge now is to put forth the best tournament and championship that we can for the teams that are selected, and give the student athletes the best experience possible in what we can.
Bethany, any follow-up on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that it just looks different. I think that even though there's not the suspense, the excitement of the student athletes in the tournament is the same. They're having an opportunity to compete at the highest level on the biggest stage, trying to win a national championship. That hasn't changed. In some regards, and again, this is me attempting to see the glass as half full. I think there are opportunities and John alluded to this, to continue to enhance what that student experience is. So you've got people who know they're probably hosting. They put in a bid, they're in the top 16, they're planning on it. So they're that much more prepared when selections come out so that teams can be prepared to get there. They can look for creative ways to enhance the student experience. I heard about one of the soccer hosts in the fall reached out to schools as soon as they knew who were coming to their site, and they got some footage from the sports info department, and they figured out, and they put clips together as highlights for a lead into their game. Yep. And they figured out what music it was they wanted played during their practices. Those aren't things that are as commonplace in the past because it's such a scramble when you don't know if you are or are not hosting. You don't know what that ranking is. And there's so many moving parts when it comes to hosting. If you can't do that work in advance as much as you might want to, you can't do all these extra enhancements. So maybe it's opportunities for hosts to be that much more prepared. Again, work to really enhance the experience for the teams that are coming to their site. Coaches can prepare that much more in advance. There's elements to it that are less glamorous, much more practical, but they will ultimately end up really benefiting the student experience when it comes to the site of competition. So while it looks different, I think there are still positives as a result.
For argument's sake, though, Bethany, wouldn't they be finding out who they're hosting the same time, no matter the system, when the bracket is revealed?
Right. They're finding out who they're hosting at the same time, but they probably, in the past, they never knew if they were hosting or not. Now they know that they are most likely hosting.
Because you're saying the top 8 will know the night before versus getting a call before the bracket's released that they're hosting.
For those top 16 on the first weekend, those people know if they put a bid in, they most likely are hosting.
Okay.
And you know that well in advance. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that you look at athletic training, athletic communications. Yes. The first weekend in March is not a great weekend for people in that world. Nope. It's a pretty chaotic time. So if they have an extra week on the front end where they can prepare all the logistics because their team's sitting there at 13 and they know they're probably hosting, that helps them tremendously because they probably also have lacrosse and track and golf and tennis and baseball and softball somewhere that weekend, and they've got responsibilities that extend just beyond hosting NCAA basketball.
A couple of quick questions before I let you go, going back to bracketing a little bit that some of the guys have sent my way. If a top seed cannot host for whatever the reasons are, again, men, women, priority, don't put in to host, et cetera, Bethany, what's the proximity they're going to go? Is it going to be a default that whoever's in that, well, I know it can't be whoever's in that bracket, but how are you going to determine where they end up going to then play those games while still protecting them as a seed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I think this goes back to our strategy in creating the bracket is having an awareness of where those situations may occur. Obviously, we know who will have put in bids to host. We will know the rankings. We will know on our end who top seeds are the second weekend, that their men's team may also be highly competitive and still playing. So those will be conversations that we have as we're bracketing so that we can try and plan for that situation should it arise.
John, same?
Yeah, I think Bethany nailed it. I think that's one of the benefits of this NPI system is that we have the opportunity now to maybe forecast a bit more of geography and hosting, whereas the last few years, so much of our time was spent on, really just a handful of teams at the end of the day, right? Like we're spending all of our time figuring out the last three teams in the tournament, and not enough of our time in putting together the best bracket possible. Not that we did it, but now we have so much more time to work on that stuff ahead of time, and not be reactive. We have the opportunity to be proactive, and I would encourage teams to put in a bid to host, because the more teams that put in the bid to host, we have more flexibility, more opportunities. And as we talked about before, Dave, it's hard to answer your question until we know what our hosting options are, right?
Yeah.
Like, ideally, yeah, like we would love to protect our top teams, but if we don't have a team within 100 miles of that team and they're not able to host, then we can only do the best with what we have.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to keep them close if you can, but if you got to send them, you're going to have to send them depending on a lot of factors in between. I certainly understand that. Quickly, to follow up on that, when you fly teams, and I know this has been different over the years, so I'm curious your take, both of you. When you have to fly teams, is it preferable to fly them reasonably close, or is it based on bracket balance, i.e., you know what, we might send a California team to Atlanta or Baltimore or New York, or no, I'd rather send them to Chicago, John?
Yeah, no, I think it's more bracket. I mean, once you're putting them in the air, you're putting them in the air, and then we're just trying to balance the bracket as best as we can. We haven't been given, Bethany, maybe you have. I don't think so, but I'll let you speak to it. We haven't been given a hard number on flights that we have to adhere to. Just that, if we don't have to fly teams, we shouldn't have to fly teams. It's it's that balancing act between both cost effectiveness as well as bracket integrity.
Bethany?
I agree with John. And, the teams who you have to fly, that's almost kind of a wild card, right? Where you look at all the different places where you could slot them in and what flexibility that gives you with the other areas of the bracket. So you're going to have to fly somebody. How can you do it in a way so that you continue to have a creative bracket in other areas? And again, I see it a little bit as a wild card where you can slot that team who you're flying in a lot of different locations.
Okay. I appreciate the insight on that thought. And again, to John's point, we have a lot of time between now and then. And certain, there's a lot of factors that play a role. You two have given me a ton of time, more than I requested. I more than appreciate it. You two are great. This is a wonderful conversation. I know we'll have more conversations in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be joining others too to do that. So thank you again for your time, diligence, answers, even off air. You two have been very helpful. I most appreciate it. I know we didn't get to everything that everybody probably wants to know, and all the nuances and all the deep rabbit holes. We will cover those. And again, at some point after the season, we're going to dive into this maybe in a more nuanced way after we've gotten this first year under our belts to understand the impacts. So in that said, we leave the guests with the final word. Bethany, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who are tuned into this?
I think it's an exciting new adventure for everybody, and the new NPI era. I know our group is excited about it. More broadly, we're really looking forward to going down to Salem for the Final Four. I know firsthand how hard all the people down there work, both with the City of Salem and Roanoke College and the ODAC, and they're top notch. And so for 4 women's basketball teams to have the opportunity to have such a special experience in Salem, we're really excited about that, and really looking forward to a lot of good games as we come down the home stretch here and in the tournament. I think it's been a highly competitive year on the women's side, and there are some really impressive teams out there. So our group is excited for the next few weeks here, and just look forward to entering the NPI era together with everyone.
John, final thought.
Yeah, Bethany's been a tremendous resource for me. Being first year chair, and Bethany, it's been great that you were able to get this second year under your belt, because it's been great to pick your brain on a lot of this stuff as well. So I'm a little bit more prepared for Dave and all the other D3 guys, hard hitting questions here. So I don't need as heavy a flak jacket as you do, I don't think. But yeah, look, this has been, professionally for me, this has been, the most rewarding experience I've had serving on the men's basketball committee. I've been really fortunate to learn under two great previous chairs, Sarah Kotraki, Luke Vakurtzi, and Mike Schauer before them. And, it really is special being there in Fort Wayne, watching four teams compete for a national championship. And, last year on the men's side, we broke attendance records. We had an incredible tournament, and, we're hoping to top it this year. So anybody who's listening, who's a fan of Division III basketball, get your tickets, find your way to Fort Wayne, find your way to Salem. It's just incredible for the student athletes and everyone involved. And I'm really excited to see what the next month has to offer.
John, you got lightning in a bottle with Trine. Trine being the title game. Let's be honest.
Hey, we've had 2 years in a row. Christopher Newport the year before on a buzzer beater.
Yeah, great games
really,
for sure.
You really can't draw it up any better. So, anybody in Fort Wayne who witnessed the last 2 years of those two types of championship games on the men's side, really should be getting your tickets early, because it's incredible, and there's nowhere I'd rather be that weekend.
I agree. Thank you again, you two. Really, really appreciate it. Enjoy the next few weeks if you can. I know it'll be a little hard. In the meantime, we'll look forward to catching up you down the road. And again, appreciate all the intel and time.
Thanks for having us, Dave, and thanks for all you do for Division III basketball on both the men's and women's side. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. You guys do a great job.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Bethany Danley and Jenna Lacey on the Hoopsville hotline. We recorded that on Wednesday. Appreciate their time. Hopefully you got your questions answered. If you didn't, apologies. We did our best. I kid you not, that was a much longer conversation than I expected. Just great answers from both about it all. Our data guys will tell you a team losing losses from their resume isn't a big deal. I get that, but there's people who aren't sure about that. Or how that works or any of that. So, fascinating conversation. So here's the deal. I actually have a meeting. I was just putting it in my calendar for tomorrow morning to talk more with the committee chairs and to do some other things. Remember last year's the last 2 years, top 16 show? Admittedly. With NPI, that's not that exciting. And then the championships committee added a twist that kind of hosed us. We had been in talks. I don't need to give you all the details because I don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce. But we were in talks of doing a top 16 with an NPI ranking no one knew was coming. Championships Committee reviewed everything from the fall. And one of the things is NPI is seen that final week every day. Now it's going to be seen almost for a full 2 weeks. And the reason that was put in place was that some conferences, the NAC comes to mind, maybe the NESCAC, possibly the CUNYAC, I'm guessing off the top of my head, use NPI as a tiebreaker eventually in a lot of their stuff. Whether that's right or wrong is a whole nother conversation. I think you got to find something before you get to NPI, in my opinion, or any metric like that, strength of schedule, etc. Because then it's based on somebody's scheduling, right? I'm being a little facetious. So they needed the data sooner than the final week of the season. We thought we were going to figure out a way to give that to them while still giving us a little bit of an edge on that top 16 show. It didn't happen. Championships Committee did something no one, I think, expected, or at least those I talked to didn't think they'd go to that level. Anyway, long story short, we're still going to do something that Thursday night, which is February the 20th. There will still be a reveal of some kind. We are still working on those details. Thus the meeting tomorrow. So look forward to that. That will be a Thursday evening show at 7 o'clock to talk about all that fun stuff and do some kind of reveal. There's a hook. We're massaging it. In the meantime, Monday's show will be at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Who will we have on? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I've got a very busy weekend ahead of me that includes gymnastics, believe it or not. But we'll figure it out and get that all crafted. Next Thursday's show will be a noon p.m. Eastern time, or that's redundant, noon Eastern time show, because I do have a gig in the evening. So that will be a change of schedule. Then back to 7 o'clocks for a little while. And again, a reminder, while the Selection Sunday show's title will maybe be changed, there will be a Hoopsville that Sunday evening. Pat Coleman will be our host of that show. I will be out of town with meetings with Major League Baseball, my pretty heavily involved job when it's baseball season, or even when it's not. It's not full-time for those of you wondering at home. So Pat has graciously offered to host that. I may make an appearance. We'll work on those details. And we'll craft that show as well. As far as a normal bracket reaction show on Monday, unless something changes, that will not happen. We will do it on Tuesday afternoon instead. And again, we'll talk to the committee chairs on that Tuesday about how it all worked out, right? So that's kind of where it all is. Any questions? Haven't gotten any today. I appreciate it. I'm sure maybe our show will inspire some questions, but I appreciate the committee chairs being so forthright and open about a lot of it. Also want to thank our guests on today's show. We had a lot of them, including Aaron Anenson, who had to deal with no power shortly before the show, and we may not have seen his lovely face in real time. We got to see a picture of his family, and we appreciate his efforts to still be on the show. Eric Bridgeland out at Redlands. John Herbixmeyer, I had to think about that for a second, out at Bethel, and of course, Catherine August, I should say, at Colorado College. And to thank all the SIDs who helped us out as well. Austin and Adam, along with John and who am I missing? There's one I'm forgetting. Matt. I want to thank everybody for their assistance in getting our guests on the show. If you got a guest idea, send them our way. Email us, hoopsville@d3sports.com, or contact us through social media. And again, we'll be on the air Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern with our next show. We'll find somebody, and hope you enjoy the new jerseys that are up. If you're interested in sending us a jersey, contact me. Also, by the end of the weekend, we will have I'm going to call it a donations and contributions page put together. It's all the different avenues you can give back to Hoopsville, with larger plans and special programming and other benefits to come. But in the meantime, we have items on an Amazon wish list and a B&H photo wish list. We also have, to hang these jerseys, we need more hangers for that matter, and a lot of other means. So, and people ask about donations. And by the way, this was not recorded earlier. Apologies. We'll get that off the screen. People ask about donations and other ways of giving back. We're going to put a page together of all the avenues that are currently set up and ones that we're putting together for the future as well. So with that, we sign off. This show went a little longer than I expected it to, but I appreciate everybody who joined us and hope you enjoyed it as well. And we'll see you Monday evening. Enjoy a great weekend of basketball. We already know some great games on docket, like Bethel versus Gustavus Adolphus in women's basketball. You got Redlands versus Cal Lutheran in men's basketball. That's just from this show. There's a whole mess of great games that are going to take place. So log on to d3hoops.com. Make sure you follow along on the scoreboard page. The guys are doing a great job of keeping that updated. And we'll hear more from some of them maybe on Monday. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by d3hoops.com from the Hoopsville studios. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Have a great evening. Enjoy the games this weekend. And in the meantime, we'll see you back here on Monday.